Chapter 1940. Yes, I understand. Xiao Hua nodded slightly. Thank you, fellow Taoist Xiao. Yu Qian heaved a sigh of relief. He raised his hand and brought the table closer to Xiao Hua. His disciple also sat to the left of Cheng Lihao and the others. Fellow Taoists, Huang Tianla still had a smile on his face. My Tianmin Mountain's disciples are to your left. If anything happens, we will definitely be in front of you. Ah, just as Huang Tianla finished speaking, a cultivator's scream came from a corner of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. When everyone looked over, they couldn't help but turn pale with fright. They saw a young male cultivator around the 6th layer of qi refining, holding his stomach and rolling on the ground in pain. His entire forehead was covered in sweat, and his face was abnormally ferocious, as if he was in incomparable pain. Fellow Taoists, just as the Tianmin Mountain's disciples were about to walk over, they heard the cultivator yell, "It's so painful that I want to die." He clenched his hand tightly on the ground. On his palm, there was an oval-shaped 9-colored spot, which looked very strange. The cultivator's fingernails were all broken by the hard crimson ground. The cultivator raised his head and spat out a mouthful of stinky black blood. He immediately lay on the ground, no longer moving. When the Tianmin Mountain's disciples turned over the cultivator's corpse, they saw that the cultivator's face was covered in black strands. Moreover, his entire face quickly withered and soon shrunk into a ball. Dove poison. Suddenly, an unknown cultivator exclaimed in shock, "This is the poison of the 9-headed dove." But before this cultivator's voice fell, a series of screams came from the other corners of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Another few cultivators around the 6th layer of qi refining were poisoned. Huang Tianla, this is... Su Mingyu and the other Foundation establishment cultivators were shocked when they saw this. They hurriedly checked their bodies and found that the poison had already entered their bodies. They couldn't help but be furious. Huang Tianla's face was pale and his eyes were dull. He smiled bitterly and said, "Everyone, not to mention you, I have also been poisoned." As he spoke, he raised his hand. Sure enough, on Huang Tianla's palm, a 9-colored spot appeared intermittently. It was the poison of the 9-headed dove. "Father, the boy is not poisoned," Huang Liang hurriedly said. "Grandfather, the boy didn't either," Huang Mengxiang also said in a low voice, but his gaze was slightly worried as he glanced at Xiao Hua. "Father, your daughter-in-law doesn't have one either," Yang Yu hurriedly added. Huang Tianla rolled his eyes and raised his voice. "Which fellow Taoist hasn't been poisoned yet?" "Huang Tianla, this is all your fault. With the exception of your son, who else hasn't been poisoned?" Several cultivators swore, gnashing their teeth. Reporting to the patriarch, "We didn't." The Huang family's disciples standing nearby bowed and said, "That's strange." Huang Tianla scratched his head. It was as if yellow mud had fallen into his crotch. He couldn't explain it clearly. "And this Xiao hasn't been poisoned." Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with anger, but he forcefully suppressed it. He coldly stood up and waved his hand. 3 wine cups filled with dark green spirit wine were lined up in a row. He asked, "This Xiao doesn't like spirit wine. I didn't drink these 3 cups of spirit wine. I presume that the 9-headed dove's poison was placed in these spirit wine. Fellow Taoist Huang, how do you explain this?" "Spirit wine?" Huang Tianla looked at the spirit wine on the table and was somewhat surprised. "Fellow Taoist Huang, if you don't give this Xiao an explanation and cure my junior sister's poison, don't blame this Xiao for being ruthless and washing Tianmin Mountain with blood," Xiao Hua coldly said. When Huang Mengxiang heard that Xiao Hua hadn't been poisoned, she was happy at first. However, after hearing Xiao Hua's threat, her beautiful eyes looked at the unusually calm Xue Xue. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, don't worry. This poison really wasn't done by this Huang. If it was done by this Huang, how could Xiang Xue and the others be here?" Huang Tianla explained. "This spirit wine is from your Tianmin Mountain. It's a banquet for us. Now that the wine is poisoned, how do you explain this?" Xie Yuqi sneered. At this moment, a Huang family's disciple said in shock, "Patriarch, look at Zheng Ziho." When everyone heard this, they immediately looked at Zheng Ziho, who had almost been forgotten by everyone. They saw strands of black hair growing from Zheng Ziho's forehead. His sweet smile looked strange and terrifying as the black hair spread. Moreover, on his outstretched hands, 9 colored poison spots appeared. Oh no, Huang Tianle said anxiously. He knew that Zheng Ziho had died here. Everything would be hard to explain to the ascending mountain Zheng family. Moreover, grandfather, this Zheng Ziho was Qi refining stage 8, right? Huang Mingxiang said. Qi refining stage 7 cultivators haven't been poisoned yet. How could he be poisoned? I'm afraid someone wanted him to die early. Do you still need to say it? Someone must have done it. Su Mingyu sneered. This person must be in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. After speaking, he turned to look at Xiao Hua. That's right, fellow Taoist Xiao. Xiaoyuqi walked 2 steps forward. Together with Su Mingyu, they stood on both sides of Xiao Hua. He said, in the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, aside from the disciples of the Tianmin Mountains Huang family, you're the only one who hasn't been poisoned. Hee, and Huang Mingxiang was also awakened by you. I don't think I have such great abilities. I didn't think that an unknown guest of Imo Cloud Village would have such abilities. Shut up for this young master. Xiao Hua said angrily. Don't think that just because this young master is more capable than you, this young master is heavily suspicious. If you annoy this young master, do you believe that I won't kill you right now? When Xiao Hua saw that Xue had been poisoned, he had already been annoyed. Unfortunately, even though he knew how to refine pills, he had never refined a detoxification pill before. He also didn't have a pill recipe for this kind of pill. He was at his wits' end regarding Xue's situation. Now that he saw that he was being suspected, how could he not be angry? Senior brother, Xue said softly, this is this lowly concubine's fate. Why take your anger out on others? Your anger is making this concubine scared. Xiao Hua's eyes widened in anger. It seemed that he was really on the verge of exploding and killing people in an instant. However, when he heard Xue's words, the corner of his eyes twitched a few times. He forced a smile on his face and turned his head to say gently, Hee, senior brother is just scaring them. Don't worry, senior brother will definitely be able to detoxify you. After he finished speaking, his mind spun rapidly, trying to find a way to detoxify the poison. At the same time, he rummaged through his space for a jade slip. He had just killed Shangcheng of the 10,000 Poison sect and took his storage bag. However, there were many storage bags that didn't belong to him in his space, so he really didn't have time to look through them. Now that he needed to use them, he looked through them to see if there was any way to detoxify the poison. This Xia wants to see. Xia Yushi sneered. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Huang Tianle anxiously say, Fellow Taoist Xia, it's useless to say anything else. It's better to quickly think of a way to detoxify the 9-headed dove's poison. Fellow Taoist Xia. Su Mingyu saw that Xiao Hua's anxiousness wasn't fake and hurriedly signaled to Xia Yushi with his eyes. Forget it, today's situation is urgent. This Xia won't lower himself to your level. Xia Yushi snorted and turned to walk towards Huang Tianle. Fellow Taoist Huang, at this point, we naturally have to find the culprit. Only he has the antidote to this poison. Li Mingzhu anxiously said, I don't believe it. Fellow Taoist Huang, don't you have any doubts in your heart right now? This Huang, sigh. To be honest, really, I can't think of who would do such a thing. This is simply killing my Tianmin mountain. Huang Tianle also said bitterly. What about fellow Taoist Huang Tianming? Where did he go? Mu Lanshan and Lan Ping, who had been silently thinking, suddenly asked. That's right, what about Huang Tianming? He is the steward of Tianmin Mountain, a foundation establishment cultivator second only to fellow Taoist Huang. Everyone suddenly realized only he could poison the spirit wine. No, it can't be Tianming. Huang Tianle said firmly, this kind of harmful thing to Tianmin Mountain is definitely not done by him. This Huang can guarantee with his life. But what about Huang Tianming? Where is he? Everyone was talking at once. Now that the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall is sealed by the Great Formation, who can activate this formation other than people from Tianmin Mountain? Who else can do such a thing? Hee. A cold, owl-like voice sounded in the sky above the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. I didn't expect a group of people who are about to die to be able to guess that this was done by this old man. Tianming. Tianming. Huang Tianle shouted as if he had just woken up. What's going on? This. How can this be you? It's really Huang Tianming? Not only Xiaohua, but even Huang Meng and Yang, you were stunned. Why can't it be me? Huang Tianming's familiar voice sounded in everyone's ears. Huang Tianle, you must have suspected this old man when Shang Qinghe came out, right? At this time, Huang Tianle's face was indescribably bleak and even a little distressed. He shook his head and said, that thought only flashed through my mind. I definitely didn't think much about you. Hee, the vermilion bird flame formation can't be used. Other than you, the head of the family, isn't this old man the only one who knows? Who else could have revealed it to Shang Qinghe? Huang Tianming said with a smile. But this old man didn't expect that in the end. You still hid it from this old man. You actually used the vermilion bird's celestial body and your blood essence to activate the Great Formation. Presumably, the head of the Huang family, who has lost all his blood essence, will die in a few days, right? Father. Huang Meng was shocked. Huang Mengxiang was also shocked. Grandfather. Tianming. Huang Tianle looked like he had aged 10 years. He sat shakily on the chair and murmured, Tianming. Huang Mengxiang's matter was naturally done by this old man. It's a pity that Zheng Ziho was too unlucky. He couldn't be the next head of the Huang family and was actually taken care of by a little foundation establishment stage from Mo Cloud Village. He can only dream of his own great dreams. Huang Tianming was a little annoyed. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have made it so complicated. In the end, I still have to do it myself. Fellow Taoists, this old man's 9-headed dove poison doesn't have to be activated. If nothing unexpected happens, the antidote will be sent up in a while. If you want to blame someone, blame the little foundation establishment stage from Mo Cloud Village. This guy ruined my plan, so I had to poison you all. Old man. Zhu Feng and several other foundation establishment stage cultivators scolded angrily. We came thousands of miles away to help Tianmin Mountain, and you treat us like this? Tianmin Mountain has its own internal conflicts. Why did you poison us? Even if we become ghosts, we won't forgive you. -8. Chapter 1941. Become a ghost? Hee, this old man hasn't seen it yet, but today is the 15th day of the 7th month, the legendary Ghost Festival. If you are fated, then go and become a ghost. Wait until you become a ghost, then come find this old man. Huang Tianming said with a smile. Tianming, I've thought about it for a long time, but I still can't understand why you did this. You have no reason. Huang Tianle said with a bitter smile. Hee, what's there to think about? Huang Tianming sneered. My cultivation is not worse than yours, and my ability to handle the affairs of Tianmin Mountain is 100 times better than yours. Haven't I been working hard for Tianmin Mountain for hundreds of years? What have you done? Where are my children? Why can't they take charge of Tianmin Mountain? You're not Tianming. Hearing this, Huang Tianle immediately stood up from his chair and said angrily, Who are you? Where's Tianming? What did you do to him? Ah? Everyone was stunned. Huang Tianming's voice also calmed down. After a while, he said, This is strange. How do you know that I'm not Huang Tianming? I've been by Huang Tianming's side for 20 years. I've seen all of his actions and remembered them in my heart. Even in the past 10 years, you haven't seen any flaws, have you? Why did you suddenly realize it when I was done today? You're Huang Jingming. Huang Tianle suddenly realized and shouted, 10 years ago, Sai, I understand now. The one who was killed 10 years ago was my brother. You were the one who did it. That's right. You finally thought of this. Huang Tianming's voice sounded. Huang Jingming, the Huang family of Tianmin Mountain has treated you well. We trained you for decades and finally sent you to my brother. In the future, your children will be the children of the Huang family's concubines. Your cultivation seems to have been passed down by the Huang family, right? Why did you do such a thing to kill the children of the Huang family? Hee, do you think this old man will say such things? Huang Jingming's voice was filled with pride. If it wasn't for the fact that this old man wanted to personally witness your deaths and the feast that this old man had designed, this old man wouldn't even have shown himself. Not only was the Huang family of Tianmin Mountain exterminated by this old man, but they were also hunted down by other cultivation families or sections. Not even a blade of grass was left. Hiss! Huang Tianla sucked in a breath of cold air and bitterly smiled. Huang Jingming, from the tone of your voice, I'm afraid you have a great enmity with my Huang clan. However, this old man has never provoked anyone like this in his entire life. How could this old man? It's true that you haven't offended anyone in this lifetime, but what about the previous generation of your Huang family? What about the previous generation? What about the generation before that? Have they always been good people in the country of Xi? Huang Jingming sneered and said, look at the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Which one of them doesn't have blood on their hands? This old man will kill all of you to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Humph! Don't use your divine sense to search for me. I wasn't even in the array. Huang Jingming scolded coldly. Xiao Hua and the others could only helplessly withdraw their divine sense. Xiao Hua had a lot of jade slips in his hands, but he didn't have any pill recipes. He also didn't have any traces of the detoxification pill. As for the nine-headed dove, there was no record of it. Xiao Hua had so many spiritual herbs in his space, but he didn't know which ones were effective. Continuous screams came from a corner not far away. Presumably, they were from low-level qi refining cultivators. Senior martial brother. Seeing Xiao Hua's gloomy face and the jade slips he kept taking out, Shui took a step forward and reached out to hold Xiao Hua's hand. She calmly said, meeting you is the greatest happiness of this concubine. Being able to accompany you for so long, even at death's door, this concubine is already satisfied. You don't need to worry. Everything is fated, this concubine. Shui. Xiao Hua clenched his teeth and looked at the Vermilion Bird Great Array. This great array was very strict and imposing. Xiao Hua just swept it with his divine sense and knew that this array, which was said to be able to kill nascent soul cultivators, absolutely lived up to its name. With his cultivation, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to break it. There are too many people who can become enemies with my Tianmin Mountains Huang clan. This Huang really can't guess who you are. Huang Tianla sighed and said, however, there are so many fellow Taoists here. They are all innocent and didn't participate in the grievances between our two clans. Why do you have to drag them into the water? Ha, this old man originally didn't plan to do so. Huang Jingming laughed and said, but by a freak combination of factors, they came here. Moreover, their deaths can be exchanged for the destruction of your Huang clan. So why not? Besides, back then, when my family was destroyed by your Huang clan, which cultivator in the state of Xi stood up? Now, let them be buried with my ancestor. Isn't that what my ancestor did in the underworld? Then, he seemed to ponder for a moment and said, Huang Tianla, this old man won't let you die unjustly. Tell me, how do you know that this old man is not Huang Tianming? If you can tell me the reason, this old man can consider telling you who I am. Obviously, Huang Jingming was very conceited about his decades of planning, but he didn't expect that Huang Tianla could still see through the flaw, which made him very puzzled. Alas, this was originally the secret of my Tianmin Mountains Huang clan. No one will know it in Shower's generation. Huang Tianla smiled bitterly. Since it has come to this, it's not a big deal to say it. Otherwise, Shower won't know his identity in the end. Father? Huang Liang was surprised. In fact, as early as when this old man took over Tianmin Mountain, my father originally wanted Tianming. Huang Tianla ignored Huang Liang, but said tirelessly, Tianming is meticulous, and his cultivation is higher than mine. If Tianmin Mountain is in his hands, it will be much stronger than before. However, Tianming grew up with me and was very attached to me. He felt that Tianmin Mountain was mine, and if he took over Tianmin Mountain, he would be taking away my things. Therefore, he threatened my father with his life, insisting that he didn't want my father to abolish his position. My father had no choice but to change his mind and hand over Tianmin Mountain to me. Tianming also swore that day that he would assist me, his elder brother, for the rest of his life, and would never betray me. Tell me, Tianming didn't want the things that were sent to him back then. So why does he want them now? Maybe he's not satisfied when he sees that your power is monstrous and you control everything. Hee. This old man has to discuss everything with Tianmin Mountain with Tianming. Huang Tianla sneered. Don't you think that this old man has asked you a lot of things over the years? This is indeed, moreover. This old man's child died early, and I had no children. Xiao was adopted by Tianming. So Tianmin Mountain will belong to Xiao from now on. Tianmin Mountain will belong to Xiao, and Tianming will be the heir. How could he take away his son's family business and hand it over to an outsider? Huang Tianla hesitated for a moment, then said, therefore, this old man has never doubted Tianming. -8. Chapter 1942. Father, Huang Liang exclaimed, Why didn't you tell this boy? Hee. What's the difference between telling you and not telling you? I loved you as much as your second uncle did, and Xiang, and the others grew up in front of me. If it weren't for today's incident, I would have never told you. You evil thief, where is my father's corpse? Huang Liang raised his head and shouted angrily. Ha ha ha, I didn't promise to tell you this. Well, it's fine if you don't tell me. Huang Tianla nodded and said, Tell me, who are you? Hee. How did your Huang clan start? Where did your Huang clan's spirit stone veins come from? Huang Jingming's voice became colder and colder. Don't tell me you don't know these things. Spirit stone veins? Huang Tianla pondered. After a moment, he said in astonishment, Your surname is Lan? You're the descendant of Lan clan? It's been so many years. Huh? You old ghost. You still remember my Lan clan? I really underestimated you. The cultivator called Lan Jingming said in a strange manner. Alas, since you're the descendant of Lan clan, I have nothing to say. Huang Tianla sighed and said, This old man has checked the ancient records of the clan. For tens of thousands of years, my Huang Tianming Huang clan has done many evil things. However, the thing that this old man despises the most is your Lan clan. Ha ha ha, Lan Jingming laughed wildly and said, Unfortunately, my Lan clan was annihilated by your Huang clan, and only a child is left. It's hard to survive on this Xiaoyu continent, and I don't know how many natural and man-made disasters have happened, but my Lan clan hasn't been completely wiped out. Alas, the heavens are unfair. Why did your Huang clan decline until now? Why can't my Lan clan produce a cultivation genius? It was only at this point that he could kill his enemies with his own hands. All the glory of your Tianmin Mountain's Huang clan should belong to my Lan clan. How can you deny it? Of course, it was your Lan clan's ancestor who discovered the spirit stone veins. If it weren't for my Huang clan's ancestor, I'm afraid this place would be the foundation of your Lan clan. Huang Tianla admitted without hesitation. But, since you've already tasted the hardships of the world and been haunted by hatred, why do you have the heart to inflict this pain on others? The Huang family of Tianmin Mountain will bear your wrath and release all the other fellow Taoists. How about that? Ha ha ha, how is that possible? Lan Jingming smiled and said, You can all die in there. This old man has already explained the whole story clearly. This old man wants to see how many of you can turn into evil spirits and cause trouble for this Lan. After that, there was no more sound from the array. Sigh, fellow Taoists, I've implicated all of you. Huang Tianla sighed and cupped his hands. At this time, no one cared about the enmity between the Huang and Lan clans. All they wanted was to get rid of their poison. However, the nine-headed dove's poison was famous in the Xiaoyu continent and was extremely rare. Many cultivators had brought along antidotes, but none of their antidotes were effective. Suddenly, Xiao Hua's eyes lit up and the jade slip in his hand stopped. After looking at it for a moment, he waved his hand and took out a pink jade bottle. He opened it and sniffed it with his nose before handing it to Shui. He transmitted his voice. This is the antidote of the 10,000 poison sect. It is said to be able to cure all poisons. Sigh, this 10,000 poison sect doesn't live up to its name. They don't even have an antidote for the nine-headed dove. They only have some poison techniques and poison methods. Thank you, husband. Shui took the jade bottle and looked at it. She frowned and said, Husband, There are only 3 pills inside, but there are 6 of us. Take it first and see if it is effective. If it is effective, let the 2 female cultivators of the Chang clan take it first. I will think of a way, Xiaohua said very decisively. Shui poured out a pill from the jade bottle. She frowned as she looked at the dark and smelly pill. She swallowed it, and a bitter and indescribable taste came from her mouth. Xiaohua looked at her with concern. After waiting for a moment, Shui's eyes flashed with joy. She raised her hand and transmitted her voice. The 10,000 poison sect is really powerful. Although it can't completely cure the 9-headed dove's poison, my life should be safe. Good. Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, the remaining poison can be refined with magic power. Give the pills to Chang Yulian and the others. Yes, husband. Shui smiled and said, but this antidote is really bitter and smelly. If you didn't look at the jade slip, I would have thought it was poison. Oh, Xiaohua's face was filled with joy. He seemed to have thought of something and quickly took out another jade slip. Shui handed the jade bottle to Chang Xuemei and transmitted her voice to her. Naturally, Chang Xuemei and Chang Yulian were overjoyed. They reached out to take it. At the same time, Shui transmitted this matter to Chang Lihao and the others. Sure enough, Chang Lihao and the others didn't hesitate at all. They immediately nodded and agreed with Xiaohua's opinion. Although Xiaohua didn't particularly care, he was secretly happy when he saw that Chang Lihao and the others were very affectionate. He didn't help the Chang family for nothing. Xiaohua took out a jade slip and looked at it for a moment. He transmitted his voice to Shui and said, Wife, I found a way, but I don't know if it will be effective. Tell me. Although Shui had already cured the poison, she was still happy when she heard that there was a way. As the saying goes, fight poison with poison. If we use another kind of poison to cure the 9-headed dove's poison, it should be effective, right? Ah. Really? Shui nodded, but then she frowned. However, we have to consider the details. Otherwise, if one poison doesn't work, we'll add another. Won't he die faster? We don't need to try. Xiaohua looked at Chang Lihao and the others. Although their cultivation was shallow, they were still above the 10th layer of the qi refining realm. For the time being, they didn't show any signs of being poisoned. He got up and walked towards Huang Tianla. Huang Tianla seemed to have given up. He just sat on a chair with Huang Meng, Yang Yu, and Huang Mengxiang beside him. His face was slightly sad, and Huang Meng's face was extremely gloomy. Xie Yujiang and the other Foundation Establishment cultivators from Cultivation sects and Chu Yuchang and the other Foundation Establishment cultivators from Cultivation families were divided into 2 groups. They sat together and discussed something in low voices. However, everyone was frowning. Obviously, they didn't have any useful ideas. When Huang Tianla saw Xiaohua coming, he quickly stood up and cupped his hands. Fellow Taoist Xiao, thank you for saving Xiang Er. Unfortunately, because of my Huang family's matter, I'm afraid you'll be implicated. Then he turned around and said, Oh right, Xiang Er, come and thank fellow Taoist Xiao for his kindness. I wanted to wait until tomorrow morning to thank you, but it seems I won't have the chance. Huang Mengxiang stared at Xiaohua and walked over with light steps. He bowed and said, This servant thanks Xiao Senior for his kindness. This servant made Yang Yu frown. Huang Mengxiang bowed and winked at Xiaohua, making Xiaohua feel quite embarrassed. Get up, little friend Huang. You didn't forget to thank me in the restriction just now. Xiaohua waved his hand and didn't let Huang Mengxiang kneel. Huang Mengxiang took the opportunity to straighten up and naughtily stuck out his tongue. He turned around and walked to Yang Yu's side, acting like an innocent and lively girl. Fellow Taoist Xiao, what's the matter? Huang Tianla smiled apologetically and said, This Huang has already given my most powerful magic tool to fellow Taoist. There's nothing else that can satisfy fellow Taoist. Fellow Taoist Huang doesn't have it, but this Xiao has it. Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand. He took out a jade bottle and handed it to Huang Tianla. What's this? Huang Tianla took it with a puzzled expression. He opened the jade bottle and a faint fishy smell spread out from the jade bottle. Huang Tianla stared at it and scanned it with his divine sense. He still didn't understand and looked at Xiaohua strangely. This is the poison of the azure python. Xiao Hua said indifferently. Azure python? Poison? Huang Tianle frowned at first, but then he came to a realization. He was pleasantly surprised and said anxiously, the azure python is a famous poisonous creature in my country of Xi. The poison that an adult azure python spits out is something that even foundation establishment cultivators can't resist. Although it's inferior to the nine-headed dove, but it can be used to fight poison with poison. Unfortunately, this Xiao is not a doctor nor an alchemist, so I can't use it to make an antidote. I also don't know how to use poison to fight poison, so I'll give it to fellow Taoist Huang. Xiao Hua said with regret. He didn't finish reading the jade slip of the 10,000 Poisons sect, so he really couldn't find a way to use poison to fight poison, so he didn't dare to say anything. Seeing Xiao Hua walk over, Xie Yuji and Chu Yuchang's groups naturally paid attention. By the time Huang Tianle's words reached their ears, a few people had already separated themselves from the two groups and walked over. Fellow Taoist Xiao, this item. This Huang has some experience in using it in his early years. If fellow Taoist is not worried, you can let this Huang test it. Huang Tianle held the jade bottle in his hand and said to Xiao Hua with a smile on his face, if this succeeds, this Huang will immediately detoxify the disciples of Mo Yun village. Good. Xiao Hua clapped and said, fellow Taoist Huang, using your own body to test the poison can make up for your negligence. Huang Tianle understood and bowed. He was extremely grateful and said, fellow Taoist Xiao, thank you for giving me this opportunity. However, this is fellow Taoist Zhao's merit, so I don't dare to take it all for myself. Fellow Taoist Huang, what is this? Xie Yuji and the others came forward and wanted to take the jade bottle from Huang Tianle's hand. Humph! Xiao Hua knew that Huang Tianle's Dharma body had used up all of his essence blood and didn't have much magic power left. He snorted and rubbed his right thumb and middle finger together. A ray of magic power shot out and blocked Xie Yuji and Huang Tianle. Fellow Taoist Xie, what is the meaning of this? Xiao Hua said coldly, you want to steal my item in front of me? Why would I want to steal your item? Xie Yuji was a bit scared, but he looked at the other foundation establishment cultivators who came with him and said, Mo Yun village and our cultivation sects all have people who are poisoned. Since you have a detoxification method, you should share it with us and see if it works. -8. Chapter 1943. Hearing Xie Yuji's soft words, Xiao Hua was too lazy to argue with him and only said, this is something I gave to fellow Huang. Don't have any other thoughts, or else I won't be polite. So what if you're not polite? A cultivator from a big family scolded. A little foundation establishment. What are you being arrogant for in front of us? Aren't you afraid we'll kill you? Xiao Hua looked at that guy with disdain and ignored him. Sure enough, someone next to that cultivator immediately persuaded, we're all on the same boat. Why bother? Humph! That cultivator snorted and sat down, watching coldly. Huang Tianle looked at everyone, thought for a bit and said, this is fellow Zhao's jade bottle. It contains the poison of the green python. Without waiting for Huang Tianle to finish, everyone understood. Their faces showed joy as they shouted, good. The heavens never bars one's way. Haha, I'm willing to use my body to test the poison and see if I can cure the poison of the nine-headed dove. Huang Tianle and the others stopped cheering and said with a smile, fellow Huang, don't worry. In the distance, a 10th layer Qi refining middle-aged cultivator shouted, Junior is Mudu. Here is an ancient recipe. It's a secret method to make poison, but I've never used it before. Junior has been thinking about it, but I can't find a poison that matches the nine-headed dove. Now that we have the poison of the green python, Junior is willing to offer this recipe. Good, everyone is collecting firewood. The fire is really strong. Hearing this, Xiao Hua was overjoyed. Since there was a secret method, it was much better than Huang Tianle's trial and error. Sure enough, Mudu handed over a silk-like item to Huang Tianle. Looking at the small jade bottle in Huang Tianle's hand, he smiled and said, if it works, Senior Huang, Senior Xiao, please cure Junior's poison first. Of course. Huang Tianle didn't discuss with Xiao Hua and nodded. Seeing that there was a highly toxic poison and a secret formula to detoxify it, everyone's hopes soared. Subconsciously, they all rushed over. As for the cultivator who had just reprimanded Xiao Hua, he became somewhat restless and kept looking over. Disciples of the Huang family, please come and maintain order. Huang Liang shouted when he saw that the situation was getting out of control. Yes, many of the Huang family's disciples who weren't poisoned answered and stood in various places of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Although they were very scattered, it was clear that they had practiced this many times. The cultivators of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall were separated by the disciples of the Huang family. Their emotions were calm, but they didn't sit down. Instead, they quietly watched. At this moment, a few more low-level Qi refinement cultivators were poisoned to death. Their painful cries echoed throughout the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Under everyone's gaze, Huang Tianle opened the silk cloth, squinted his eyes, and carefully read the words on it word by word. After a while, just when everyone was getting impatient, Huang Tianle closed his eyes again and seemed to be thinking carefully. Alas, it really is an ancient technique. It's really strange. If I didn't look at the silk, I absolutely wouldn't have been able to think of such a method. When Huang Tianle opened his eyes, a trace of astonishment flashed through his eyes. Sighing, he casually, unintentionally handed the silk to Xiaohua. Then, with a stretch of his hand, a drop of transparent liquid with traces of blood flew out from the jade bottle. Xiaohua took the silk cloth and was clearly stunned. Mu Du was on the other side of Huang Tianle. When Mu Du saw that Huang Tianle had mistakenly handed the silk cloth to Xiaohua, he raised his eyebrows and reached out as if he wanted to take it. How could Xiaohua let go of the secret method that was delivered to his door? Xiaohua glanced at Mu Du and unfolded the silk cloth without any hesitation and read it word by word. Mu Du's hand reached out, but his fingers were slightly trembling and he couldn't say a word. Huang Tianle took out a drop of the green python's venom and flicked his hand. The venom did not enter his mouth, but instead floated in mid-air. Huang Tianle reluctantly mobilized his spiritual power, and several strange-looking spells hit the venom. The venom was gradually divided into 10 portions. Then, with a point of his hand, one portion flew to Huang Tianle's forehead. The moment the venom touched Huang Tianle's wrinkled forehead, it immediately seeped into it. In an instant, several black threads flowed down his forehead, and it really looked like he was bitten by the green python. But when the black strands reached Huang Tianle's neck, several strands of 9 colored stripes appeared under his neck and rushed towards the black strands and quickly tangled together. Just as everyone expected, the pitch-black lines and the 9 colored stripes gradually disappeared. When the black lines disappeared, the 9 colored stripes rushed up again. They saw Huang Tianle pointing at the venom in front of him again, and another portion flew into his forehead. It wasn't until Huang Tianle used 8 portions of the green python's poison that the 9 colored stripes on his chin disappeared completely. Great kindness. Huang Tianle clapped his hands and said, I've neutralized most of the poison in my body. The rest is nothing to worry about. However, using poison to neutralize poison is an unconventional method. I have to use this secret method. Otherwise, the 2 poisons won't be able to neutralize each other. It will only be poison on poison. Senior Huang, Junior can use the green python's poison to neutralize the poison? Mu Du asked urgently. Of course. Huang Tianle pointed his finger and a drop of green python's poison flew in front of Mu Du. Mu Du didn't dare to hesitate and cast a seal. The situation was very similar to Huang Tianle's, but he only used 7 portions to neutralize the poison in his body. Thank you, fellow Taoist Huang. Mu Du bowed in front of everyone. Haha, no need to thank me. This green python's poison belongs to fellow Taoist Xiao. Huang Tianle pointed at Xiaohua. Thank you, fellow Taoist Xiao. Mu Du bowed again. Xiaohua smiled and put the silk in his hand. No need, your secret method is not bad. Fellow Taoist, are you interested in making a deal with me? What deal? Mu Du was surprised. Haha, fellow Taoist, just wait a bit. Xiaohua smiled. At this time, seeing that Huang Tianle and the nameless cultivator had neutralized the poison, the crowd became noisy again. Fellow Taoist Huang, quickly give us the poison. Senior Huang, quickly tell us how to neutralize poison with poison. Huang Tianle was about to speak when Xiaohua waved his hand and said, Fellow Taoists, don't worry. Fellow Taoist Huang's jade bottle only has 4 or 5 drops of green python's poison. It can save 6 people at most. What? Only a little bit? Xie Yusin was shocked. Why didn't you say so earlier? Why should I say so earlier? Xiao Hua was surprised. This is my own poison. Why should I tell you how much there is? Xiao Hua originally wanted to take out the venom to help everyone detoxify the poison, but after hearing what that cultivator said, he changed his mind. In this world, no matter how precious something was, as long as it was obtained without paying a price, who would cherish it? -8. Chapter 1944. What is the meaning of this, fellow cultivator Xiao? Xie Yuqi asked coldly with a gloomy face. Nothing. Xiao Hua reached out his hand and took the jade bottle from Huang Tianle's hand. He said, fellow Taoists, although you were innocently dragged into the grudge between the Huang and Lan clans, this wasn't something that fellow Taoist Huang could decide. We can't blame fellow Taoist Huang. We can only blame Lan Jingming. Of course, since this fellow Taoist and I have the antidote, I naturally won't be stingy and will definitely help all of you. However, since I'm going to give you all such precious green python venom, shouldn't you all show some appreciation? What? Xie Yuqi and the others were dumbfounded. They really didn't expect Xiao Hua to do this. Hee, fellow Taoists, please take your time to think about it. I'm going to help all of you. As Xiao Hua spoke, he pulled the wooden boat towards Chang Lihao and the others. As he turned around, he scanned the entire Vermilion Bird Palace hall with his divine consciousness. He opened his mouth slightly, and the dream executioner flying sword flashed. It followed his Taoist robe to his feet and disappeared. Chang Lihao and the others were overjoyed when they saw Xiao Hua. There were too many joys and sorrows today that these qi-refining disciples couldn't take it anymore. Then, Xiao Hua used Mu Du's secret technique to detoxify Chang Lihao, Chang Limin, and Chang Liqiang's poison. When Chang Liqiang bowed and thanked Xiao Hua, Yu Chuan quickly went forward and said with a smile, fellow Taoist Xiao, yes, I know. Xiao Hua didn't even look and waved his hand. Another drop of poison appeared. When Xiao Hua finished detoxifying Yu Chuan and his disciples, a timid voice came from the side. Senior Xiao, this junior's cultivation is too shallow. I'm afraid I won't be able to hold on for long. This junior's spirit stones and yellow talismans, if Senior Xiao likes them, a little 7th-layer qi refining cultivator was pitifully handing over some things to Xiao Hua, while the poisonous spots on the 9-headed dove in his hand were growing larger and larger. Don't be impatient. Sit down. Xiao Hua smiled. After the little cultivator sat down, Xiao Hua wasted a bit of his magic power to detoxify the cultivator's poison without saying a word. Then, he looked at the spirit stones and yellow talismans, blinked, and said, I can't accept these things, but there are no rules. You're the first, so I'll be thick-skinned. I don't dare. The young cultivator gratefully said. It's a pity that I don't have anything else, otherwise, I would have given everything to Senior. All right. Xiao Hua pulled his hand and split it in half, saying to Mu Du, fellow Taoist Mu, how about we split it in half? Ah? All right. Mu Du opened his mouth and nodded in agreement. He really hadn't thought of this. Senior Xiao. All the aura-refining cultivators were overjoyed. They shouted and rushed over. Huang Clan's disciples, help maintain order. According to your cultivation base, from the lowest to the highest. Prepare your spirit stones and other things. Xiao Hua didn't hold back at all as he loudly ordered. Do as Senior Xiao said, quickly. Huang Liang saw this and immediately ordered. From the lowest to the highest cultivation base, you also need to prepare your spirit stones. Hee. Huang Mingxiang stood not far away, holding Yang Yu's arm with his hand, watching Xiao Hua's actions with great interest. Fellow Taoists, look at this guy. Li Mingzhu was a bit annoyed and whispered. He actually robbed on the spot. Saving people is one thing, but taking people's spirit stones on the spot, what's the big deal? And he doesn't even put us in his eyes, letting these low-level cultivators. Huang Tianle next to fellow Taoist Li laughed. At this juncture, since he can turn the tide, why care about such trifles? And the low-level cultivators are poisoned first. Who do you think should be detoxified first? But how long will it take for him to detoxify the poison by himself? We've already learned the secret technique. Won't we be able to help others? Xie Yuxing also complained. A secret technique is naturally a secret technique. If others know, how can it be a secret technique? Huang Tianle shook his head and said, this secret technique is Mu Du's. Who knows if Mu Du is willing? Can he not be willing? Immediately, a foundation establishment cultivator sneered. I'm afraid this is fellow Taoist Zhao's misgivings. Huang Tianle replied without any trace of politeness. Senior Xiao, there should be other considerations. Huang Mingxiang, who had been watching Xiao Hua's actions with a smile, suddenly said, Xiang Yang Yu scolded. You've just recovered from a long illness. It's better if you don't talk too much. Other considerations? Huang Tianle was stunned, then immediately realized and said in shock, fellow Taoist Xiao. Sure enough, at this moment, they heard a cry of surprise from the vermilion bird flame formation. Xiao Hua's bastard son. You dare to spoil this old man's plans again and again. This old man just left for a moment, and you actually helped others detoxify the poison? If this old man doesn't take your life, how can I be worthy of the thousands of lives of my Lan family? Following Lan Jingming's angry roar, the formation runes on the roof of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall gradually began to flash with a vermilion brilliance, with the same power as when Huang Tianle activated the formation just now. How can he activate the formation? Huang Tianle also cried out in surprise. This formation can only be activated by my Huang family's bloodline. But the roaring flames on the four walls of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall had already covered Huang Tianle's cry of surprise. All of you, get out of the way first. Xiao Hua's divine sense had always been exposed outside, but when he heard Lan Jingming appear in the formation, he immediately flicked his sleeve, and his figure floated up to the roof of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Fellow Taoist Xiao is indeed a benevolent person. Huang Tianle's face was filled with indescribable astonishment and amazement. In his entire life, he had probably never seen such a benevolent and righteous cultivator. And Huang Mingxiang's mischievous pair of big eyes stared at Xiao Hua's thin and tall figure with incomparable worship. His two delicate hands slightly clenched, as if he was abnormally worried. This young master has been waiting for you for a long time. I didn't expect you to come out now. Xiao Hua's body was in midair, and he coldly said, this young master definitely doesn't care about the grievances between you and the Huang family. You know how to activate the formation and detoxify all the cultivators, then you and I will go our separate ways. Ha ha ha. Lan Jingming's figure did not appear, but his arrogant voice reverberated in the formation. A mere foundation establishment cultivator actually dares to be so arrogant. This old man will let you see what is called a method. Wang, a burst of sound, and the flames on the roof of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall burned fiercely. The pattern of the vermilion bird on the roof of the palace hall became more and more dazzling, gradually emerging from the top. Sigh. The vermilion bird sculpture that Huang Tianle placed on the table at this time also gradually emitted traces of brilliance along with the changes in the formation. Huang Tianle understood that he was already powerless to activate the formation, and Lan Jingming's side was very obvious. He had already obtained the other sculpture that Huang Tianming should have. Squeak, a cry sounded, and the flaming vermilion bird took shape once again. However, just like before, the pressure that assaulted Xiao Hua's face made him feel suffocated, but the appearance of the vermilion bird was still blurry. Xiao Hua slapped his forehead and also released his own pressure. He forcefully endured the pressure that was comparable to a gold core cultivator's pressure, and his entire body trembled in midair. Ha ha ha. Lan Jingming's figure appeared on the back of the vermilion bird fire ape. Unexpectedly, it was still Huang Tianming's appearance. What an ignorant child. Even if you detoxified the poison of these people, so what? This old man only needs to sacrifice Huang Tianming's blood essence, and all of you will be killed by this old man. Possession? Huang Tianle was so angry that he trembled, and he pointed his finger at Lan Jingming and shouted, You can activate my Huang family's formation, isn't it because you used Tianming's blood essence? Possession. Hearing these words, Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he directly stared at Lan Jingming's eyes. The pity that he previously had for Lan Jingming had already disappeared. Hee, what do you think? Huang Tianla, if not for this, how could this old man trap all of you in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall? If not for this, how could this old man discover the final secret of the Vermilion Bird formation? Unfortunately, this old man's cultivation is still a bit lacking, and Huang Tianming's memory is missing too much. Otherwise, how could there be so many mistakes? Lan Jingming clapped his hands, and a crimson ring flew up into the air. Then, the numerous flames on the array were torn apart by the ring. Vermilion Bird Ring? Where did you find it? Huang Tianla was shocked once again. Lan Jingming laughed. Naturally, this old man's ancestor killed your Huang family's ancestor, and I obtained it. Do you still need this old man to explain? Below Xiaohua, Xie Yuji and the others also took action. Each of them took out their magic tools and wanted to fly into the air. If this old man was you, I would quietly stay down there. If this old man was defeated by Xiaohua, you all might have a chance to survive. But if you all go up and help, this old man will activate the Vermilion Bird formation. You all saw how Shang Qinghe was killed just now, right? Ask yourself, can you withstand the Vermilion Bird's attack? Lan Jingming seemed to be not nervous, and said casually, this? Xie Yuji and the others' faces changed greatly. At this moment, the whole place was filled with the pressure of the Vermilion Bird. Although they were not as weak as Xiaohua, when they thought about how the Foundation Establishment middle stage Shang Qinghe was not a match for the Vermilion Bird's flames, how could they dare to go up? Seniors, if this old man kills Senior Xiao, we will have no way to survive. Since that is the case, why not take a gamble? At this moment, Huang Mingxiang said in a clear voice, this guy has taken over my grandfather's body. Although he can activate the Vermilion Bird formation, he may not be able to use the Vermilion Bird Dharma body. Even if he uses the Vermilion Bird Dharma body and his body's blood essence, when we are killed, he will be on the verge of death. Such a method of mutual destruction, why not? Yes, the little girl is right. This old woman will take the gamble. Lei Puli, who had been keeping a low profile all this time, roared angrily. Her figure fluttered, and under the enormous might of the Vermilion Bird, she tried her best to fly to Xiao Hua's side. Her head full of white hair fluttered with the wind. This old man will also come. Qi Mingzong Zhu Feng also laughed. Since we are going to die, why not die with a bang? Haha, that's right. We will advance and retreat together with fellow Xiao, Su Mingyu, and the others immediately came to their senses. One by one, they shouted and tried their best to activate their magic power, rushing to the top of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. At this moment, everyone's cultivation was immediately revealed. Although they tried their best, not a single person could get close to Xiaohua. They were all scattered around Xiaohua. -8. Chapter 1945. Lan Jingming was clearly panicking, but he immediately clenched his teeth and said, since all of you want to die, then this old man will fulfill your wish. Either way, I will kill all of you, and this old man's revenge will be considered complete. As he spoke, Lan Jingming waved his hand, and the ring of Vermilion Bird flashed with a brilliant light. A ring of fire enveloped Xiaohua, and Lan Jingming himself flew to the side. His body shook, and a faint Vermilion Bird celestial body was actually released by him. Seeing the Vermilion Bird celestial body, Huang Tianla's last bit of hope was shattered. No one knew the power of the Vermilion Bird celestial body better than him. With this celestial body, even the city lord of Haoming City would not force him too much. Xiaohua and the other Foundation Establishment cultivators could only end up being killed. Go. Xiaohua also didn't hesitate. With a clap of his hand, the Yang Leaf Fan appeared from the space. Stirring his magic power, he fanned it over. Although the Yang Leaf Fan was only a magic tool, in Xiaohua's hand, it instantly absorbed a large amount of fire attribute spiritual energy. A fire dragon that was even larger than the Vermilion Bird Ring's fire ring roared as it rushed over. Roar! In the blink of an eye, the fire dragon rushed into the ring of fire. It only paused for a moment, as if it was being suppressed by the ring of Vermilion Bird. Then, it suddenly expanded, broke through the ring of fire, and flew straight through the ring of vermilion bird. Ah? Lan Jingming's body was slightly sluggish, and his expression was extremely shocked. He originally had two plans. If the ring of vermilion bird could kill Xiao Hua, he naturally wanted to escape with his life. But since Xiao Hua was so fierce that even a treasure like the ring of vermilion bird could not suppress him, Lan Jingming knew that he was definitely not a match for him. Therefore, he resolutely shook his body, and the faint vermilion bird celestial body rushed into the huge vermilion bird formed by flames. Just as the vermilion bird celestial body left Lan Jingming's body, a pale green brilliance flashed from the left side of Lan Jingming's body. Then, it turned into 16 rays of brilliance in the blink of an eye. These 16 rays of brilliance were like the blooming of an epiphyllum. Then, they quickly rushed towards Lan Jingming. It was Xiao Hua's dream executor. At this moment, the execution dream had 16 sword beams. It was very different from the previous 8 sword beams. Although the 8 sword beams were powerful, they were still the power of a single sword beam. It was far from the power of the sword array demonstrated in the sword playing the world. Ever since Xiao Hua's battle with Shang Cheng, he had been pondering and comprehending the sword array. Today, the situation was critical. In order to kill Lan Jingming in an instant, he absolutely could not make the slightest mistake. Moreover, he could not show off too much in front of so many cultivators. Thus, Xiao Hua had released the execution dream from the very beginning. It had been lying in ambush at the side of the great array. See, Lan Jingming felt as if he was unable to escape. He saw the 16 rays of light surrounding him and rapidly stabbing towards him. He didn't know how to dodge them. Protect. Lan Jingming forcefully clapped his hands, and a shiny piece that looked like a talisman appeared in his hand. He slightly activated his magic power and hit it on his body. At the same time, Lan Jingming looked at the celestial body that was about to rush into the flames of the vermilion bird celestial body, and his eyes showed a hint of anxiety. Go. Xiao Hua did his best to activate his sword technique, and the dream executioner became even faster. Pu, pu, pu. A series of sounds could be heard. A few of the dream executioner's flying swords were blocked by Lan Jingming, and more than 10 extremely sharp Dao laws pierced into his Daoist robes. A faint light flashed around his body, and without any more resistance, they pierced into his body. But at this moment, Lan Jingming's vermilion bird celestial body also entered the flames of the vermilion bird. Everyone in the vermilion bird palace hall suddenly felt an irresistible heat wave, and a pressure that made everyone despair came from the flames of the vermilion bird celestial body. Xiao Hua, who bore the brunt of the pressure, felt the true yuan in his meridians solidify. The magic power around him seemed to be unable to move. His body that had been baptized by the lightning tribulation also became weak. The phoenix celestial body hidden within his body was also trembling. 132 black dots, whether it was the physical body or the celestial body, were all slightly trembling. They seemed to be on the verge of collapse. The dragon vein that had been driven by the dragon transformation art was also suppressed to the point that it couldn't move at all. Damn it. It's said to be able to kill a nascent soul stage cultivator. Sure enough, your reputation is well deserved. My Jindan's stage cultivation base is still not enough. At this moment, Xiao Hua's divine sense was completely suppressed by the flames of the vermilion bird. He couldn't command the execution dream at all. He bitterly laughed in his heart and closed his eyes. He knew that he had no other choice. He felt that the heat that pierced his heart was already in front of him. Xiao Hua didn't have the strength to fight back. Just as Xiao Hua was about to be turned into ashes in the flames of the vermilion bird celestial body, a heart-wrenching scream came from Lan Jingming's mouth. This scream was filled with unwillingness and grief. It was so loud that everyone's ears were ringing and their hearts were shaking. Xiao Hua, on the other hand, felt the heat that was already in front of him. He immediately froze. The pressure that was suppressing all of his divine sense also stopped. When Xiao Hua opened his eyes to take a look, that pressure, that suffocating feeling, and that heat that was assaulting his face were like the receding tide of the sea, gradually dissipating. Xiao Hua ignored the scattering of the vermilion bird celestial body in the vermilion bird celestial body that was retracting back to the roof of the vermilion bird celestial body. He ignored the dimming of the vermilion bird celestial body under the fire dragon of Yi Yang's fan. He only looked at Lan Jingming's corpse that had fallen into the air under the 16 rays of light of the Execution Dream's sword formation. Lan Jingming's eyes were wide open and filled with sorrow. This? Whose fault is this? Xiao Hua sighed. He waved his hand, and the vermilion bird celestial body flew into his hand. The Execution Dream once again turned into a ray of light and fell to the ground along with Lan Jingming's corpse. The vermilion bird celestial body was a palm-sized ring. There were 9 vivid and lifelike vermilion bird diagrams on it. Inside and outside the diagrams, tiny runes were densely engraved. A layer of flickering flames revolved around the entire vermilion bird celestial body, as if there was a boundless universe inside. Everyone in the vermilion bird celestial body held their breaths. They did not dare to say a single word. They only raised their heads and looked at Xiao Hua, who was standing in the air with complicated gazes. After half a cup of tea's time, Xiao Hua said in a deep voice, "Fellow Taoists, continue to detoxify the poison. Prepare the spirit stones and other items." Everyone was happy at first, but then they were stunned. Huang Tianle smiled bitterly. He originally wanted to let the Huang family disciples take a look at Lan Jingming's corpse and see if there was any antidote on him. However, after hearing Xiao Hua's words, how could he let the disciples go? All right, since Xiao Hua was willing to detoxify the poison for everyone, then everyone could only do the same as before. They lined up in order and took out spirit stones and other items. They also let Xiao Hua detoxify the poison. No one mentioned Lan Jingming's matter. -8. Chapter 1946. After a meal, half of the aura-refining disciples had been detoxified. Huang Mengxiang skipped to Xiao Hua's side and said with a smile, "Senior Xiao, detoxifying the poison here alone, is it too tiring? Do you want me to help you?" Looking at Huang Mengxiang's appearance, Xiao Hua felt a headache. He waved his hand and said, "It's fine. Thank you for saving me again." Huang Mengxiang rolled his eyes and said, "Little fellow Taoist Huang, is there something wrong?" I came to ask on behalf of my grandfather. Lan Jingming, that old bastard, deserved to die. However, his remains belong to my little grandfather. My Huang clan can't let him be humiliated. Senior Xiao, you see," Huang Mengxiang said without any trace of politeness. Xiao Hua woke up. Although the one who died was Lan Jingming, his remains were still Huang Tianming's. How could Huang Tianle not care? "I was careless. You can go and tidy up. If you have any antidote, you can take it out and use it." Xiao Hua nodded. Senior Xiao is easy to talk to. Thank you." Huang Mengxiang winked at Xiao Hua and quickly ran back. After getting Xiao Hua's agreement, Huang Tianle quickly ordered the Huang clan disciples to tidy up. Unfortunately, Lan Jingming was such a cautious person. How could he leave the antidote on his body? Su Mingyu and the others were obviously disappointed. They asked in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist Huang, can you open the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's formation? We can go out and get some fresh air." Fellow Taoist Huang can also find someone to go to Lan Jingming's residence to look for the antidote. Huang Tianle took out his vermilion bird statue and activated it. He smiled bitterly and said, "I just used a lot of magic power to detoxify the poison. I don't have enough magic power right now. Please wait for a moment." Soon after, he glanced at the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's flame and said, "Moreover, everyone is poisoned. Aside from me, no one else can open the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. It is an excellent shelter. Wouldn't it be better to wait until fellow Taoist Xiao detoxifies everyone's poison before opening the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall?" Sigh, okay. Su Mingyu and the rest were afraid that something would happen to Huang Tianle. They couldn't even leave the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, so they naturally wanted to urge him. However, seeing that Huang Tianle really didn't have any magic power, they could only wait. 2 hours later, Xiao Hua successfully cured every one of the 9-headed doves. He and Mu Du had 2 storage pouches on the table. Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua waved his hand and threw his 2 storage pouches to Chang Li Hao. He smiled and said, I can't be a guest of Mo Cloud Village for free. Take these. Yes. Thank you, Senior Brother Xiao. Chong Lihao was overjoyed. His respect had already turned into worship. Xiao Hua pointed at Mu Du and said, Fellow cultivator Mu, take care of your storage pouch. You deserve it. Yes, thank you, Senior Xiao. Mu Du nodded and kept the storage back. At this time, Huang Tianla left again. He bowed and said, Fellow Taoist Xiao, this old man doesn't know what to say. I really didn't think that Mo Cloud Village would have someone as great as you. Haha, you didn't know before, but you'll know in the future. Xiao Hua smiled and waved his hand. He looked around and said, Fellow Taoist Huang, you should open the formation of the Vermilion Bird Palace. I'm afraid everyone here is already worried. Haha, fellow Taoist Xiao, please wait a moment. I'll open it now, Huang Tianla said as he took out the Vermilion Bird statue. I'll tell the disciples to change the banquet and remake the spirit wine and spirit fruits. I'll properly thank fellow Taoist Xiao, and also apologize to everyone here. I'm afraid no one will dare to drink your Huang family's spirit wine anymore. Xiao Hua watched as the Vermilion Bird statue spat out flames once again. The flames on the four walls of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall gradually subsided, finally revealing the palace doors. Moreover, under Huang Tianla's intention, 8 huge doors simultaneously appeared in 8 directions of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, all of them open. Kacha! A sudden clap of thunder resounded. Just as the entrance of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall was revealed, the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall lit up. Immediately after, the pitter-patter of raindrops and banana leaves filled everyone's ears. It's raining, Xiao Hua's divine sense slightly swept and understood. Moreover, it's a thunderstorm with lightning and thunder. Haha, fellow Taoist Huang, we didn't do anything today. Instead, we gave the Huang family a lot of trouble. Now that everything is over, we won't stay here for long. Seeing the Vermilion Bird Palace open, Su Mingyu, Xie Yujiang, and the others all stood up and cupped their hands. We'll thank fellow Taoist Xiao for the following banquet. We'll take our leave. Huang Tianla quickly stood up and said, Fellow Taoists, don't be anxious. It's midnight right now, and there's lightning and thunder. Why don't you wait until tomorrow? I'll arrange for the disciples to prepare a quiet room. Fellow Taoists, you can rest for a while. It won't be too late to leave tomorrow. Haha, no need. Su Mingyu and the others had just escaped from death and had the intention to leave. How could they dare to stay for a moment longer? Moreover, a thunderstorm like this was nothing to a foundation establishment cultivator. It was no different from a normal day. Fine, I'll send you all off. Huang Tianla understood their thoughts and said, Today, my Huang family indeed didn't receive you well. In the future, Haha, I'll bring my son to your sect to apologize. That's easy. Fellow Taoist Huang's body isn't well, so you should stay. If the Huang family needs anything in the future, please send us a message. Su Mingyu's words were clearly a refusal. They definitely wouldn't come to Tianmin Mountain again. After speaking, Su Mingyu and the others looked at each other and actually flew towards the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's 8 doors. It could be seen that their hearts were really full of fear. Sigh, really? Huang Tianla turned his head and looked. He didn't know who to send off, so he could only walk 2 steps and smile bitterly. At this time, a group of qi refinement cultivators and cultivators from other sects were also restless. They all stood up and wanted to bid farewell to Huang Tianla. Master, why are you? Just as everyone stood up, they heard a plop sound as they fell to the ground. Immediately after, a cry of surprise came from the west side of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. This voice also stopped abruptly and didn't even finish speaking. At the same time, this kind of cry of surprise sounded from all 4 sides of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. A series of plop sounds appeared. What's going on? Xiao Hua was aghast. His divine sense swept over, and he saw that Su Mingyu and the other foundation-building cultivators who flew out earlier had already fallen at the entrance of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Lying next to them were also a few aura-refining disciples. Presumably, they were the ones who discovered their abnormal state and cried out in alarm. The remaining people surrounded the entrance of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. They looked at the seemingly normal entrance with extreme fear and looked at the curtain of rain that poured in from outside the entrance. Their bodies trembled slightly, and they didn't dare to fly even half a step further. Which senior is outside? We only came to Tianmin Mountain to help the Huang family. We don't want to get involved in the grudges between the Huang family and the Lan family. Moreover, Lan Jingming was also killed by a cultivator called Xiaohua just now. We don't have any grudges with him anymore. Right now, we only want to return from Tianmin Mountain. Moreover, this junior swears that I won't take half a step within 100 miles of Tianmin Mountain. Zhao Fanling of the Zhao family took half a step forward and said very respectfully with a bow. Outside the entrance of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, there was nothing but raindrops that covered the sky and covered the earth. Although the walala sound didn't cover Zhao Fanling's voice, there wasn't any echo either. Since Senior isn't willing to speak, then this junior will take it as Senior's consent. Zhao Fanling's face was indescribably happy and worried. This junior is only a woman. I definitely won't say half a word about today's matter. I hope that Senior will raise your hand and let this junior go. As she spoke, Zhao Fanling clapped her hands and took out a jade-like magic tool from her storage pouch. Under the activation of her magic power, a layer of purple luster was produced and completely covered Zhao Fanling. Zhao Fanling didn't dare to fly. She slowly stepped out with one foot. When she saw that there was no movement, she stepped out with the other foot, moving half a foot by half a foot. When she neared the entrance of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, it was precisely where Su Mingyu was lying. Zhao Fanling hesitated for a moment, then slightly stepped out with the tip of her foot. When she saw that there was no movement, she slowly, gently, and carefully moved her foot out again. At this time, there was still no movement. Senior. Junior thanks Senior. Zhao Fanling raised her head and shouted towards the pitch-black night sky. Gathering her courage, she passed through the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's entrance. However, at this moment, the instant Zhao Fanling passed through the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's entrance, a strange thing happened. Zhao Fanling's entire body slightly twitched, as if her entire essence, energy, and spirit had been sucked out by someone. Her body went limp, and the luster of the magic tool in her hand suddenly extinguished. She laid down next to Su Mingyu. The group of cultivators with divine senses only needed to sweep a glance to understand that Zhao Fanling was no longer breathing. Ah? A few frightened screams sounded in the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Immediately, there was no more movement, and it was deathly silent. Rumble, right at this moment, a burst of thunder seemed to have struck the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. The surrounding scenery was brightly illuminated in an instant. In the night, the originally majestic artificial mountains and flowing treetops looked extremely strange at this moment. They were like night owls and also like ghosts. Xiaohua's heart jumped. The Buddha Sarira faintly emitted threads of golden light, and even the phoenix Dharma body was slightly trembling. This heavenly thunder. I'm afraid it's not the sound of a normal thunderstorm. Xiaohua, who had experienced the lightning tribulation, smelled something different from the heavenly thunder and slightly frowned. Fellow Taoists, don't be anxious, Huang Tianla hurriedly shouted. Although he told the others not to be anxious, his own face was also filled with panic. Moreover, his forehead was already covered in sweat. This night was truly strange. This person's death was truly inexplicable. Fellow Taoist Huang, what's going on? Xiaohua's eyes were bright as he stared at Huang Tianla. Although the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall was abnormally warm, Xiaohua felt a chill seeping out from his spine. Fellow Taoist Xiao, this old one really doesn't know. Huang Tianla vigorously shook his head. This old one has already lost his sense of propriety tonight. All of this really has nothing to do with this old one. Let this old one go over and take a look first. Afterwards, he walked forward a few steps and raised his voice. Where are the disciples on duty outside the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall? Why didn't anyone come over to report? -8. Chapter 1947. Fellow Taoist Huang, there's no need to shout. Near your Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, I'm afraid there's no one left alive. Xiaohua said quietly. His eyes were looking at the shining water threads outside the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. The sound of water flowing could be heard. What? Huang Tianle's face was pale. His body swayed, and he almost fell. Huang Mingxiang quickly supported him. What's wrong? Fellow Taoist Huang, you? Xiao Hua said strangely. Sigh. My divine sense is gradually declining. Huang Tianle said with a bitter smile. Moreover, the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall seems to be covered by heavenly lightning. My divine sense can't penetrate it. Amen, Xiao Hua nodded. His divine sense had only managed to extend about 3 meters out of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall before it was blocked. His Buddhist sense, on the other hand, was barely able to extend 30 meters out. Presumably, with Huang Tianle's early-stage foundation establishment cultivation, he wouldn't even be able to extend his divine sense out of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Cough, cough. I'll go take a look first. So many fellow Taoists have died. Huang Tianle actually coughed twice like a senile mortal elder. Grandfather, it's better if you don't go. You're old, your body. Huang Mengxiang advised in a low voice. Xiang I'm just going to take a look. Huang Tianle said in a low voice. As the Huang family's patriarch, how can I not go? Come with this old man. Yes, grandfather. Huang Mingxiang replied in a low voice. Huang Mang and Yang Yu followed behind him. Xiao Hua squinted his eyes and looked around. His Buddhist consciousness swept outside and then looked at the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. He had a bad feeling in his heart. Just now, when Zhao Fanling went out, his divine sense followed closely. He didn't find any magic power fluctuations at all, and Zhao Fanling fell to the ground. This was really beyond Xiao Hua's understanding. After thinking for a while, he didn't follow Huang Tianle. Instead, he walked to the table where Shui and the others were. At this moment, there weren't many people in the center of the hall. All the cultivators were scattered around the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall in a circle, facing the 8 open doors of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Shui looked calm, but Chang Yulian and Chang Xuemei were pale. Their lips were slightly black and trembling. The two of them huddled together and hid behind Shui. Chang Lihao and the other two clenched their fists. What? Are you scared? Xiao Hua also forcefully squeezed out a smile and asked, Senior brother Xiao. Chang Lihao's voice was trembling. Yes, before, although I was afraid. After all, it was a clear opponent. I knew who it was. But now, I can't see who it is. Several foundation building seniors have been killed without anyone knowing. There's not even the slightest sound. How can I not be afraid? If it weren't for senior brother Xiao, I'm afraid we would have left long ago. Perhaps we would have died at the entrance of the hall. Chang Limin echoed. Senior brother Xiao, it's all my fault. I didn't dare to be greedy and urge my brothers to come over. Chang Yulian said faintly. Chang Xuemei trembled even more. Little sister shouldn't have dragged senior brother and big sister into this. Otherwise, who knows where senior brother and big sister would be now? Why are you saying this now? Xiao Hua widened his eyes and scolded. How can cultivators of our generation have so much to be gentle about? What's done is done. Don't have any thoughts of turning back. Thinking about the past and the future in the end, it's all empty space. Chang Lihao's heart trembled. He nodded respectfully. Thank you for your reminder, senior brother. I understand. In an instant, the timidity in his eyes lessened by a bit. Although Chang Xuemei and Chang Yulian understood, female cultivators were born timid. They couldn't be enlightened in such a short time. Xiao Hua didn't say much. He looked at Shui's clear eyes. There was a kind of fear, but it wasn't timidity. Instead, it was more of concern for him. Xiao Hua frowned slightly. He didn't think much of it before, but after several life and death situations, he saw Shui so calm. Her state of mind was even more open-minded than his, as if she had thrown away life and death. How could he not be surprised? According to Shui's cultivation, she shouldn't be like this. Could it be, in the fog mountain, Ling Jingyi said something to her? Xiao Hua pondered. Moreover, Shui and Ling Jingyi didn't seem to mention anything about Shui's parents. Shui doesn't have the fire ape spirit blood in her bloodline. Instead, she has a thunder physique and is protected by that male thunder beast. Could this be? The reason for Xue Xue's abnormal behavior? Ah? At this moment, cries of surprise came from the side of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's door. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over, and he was even more shocked. Just now, after Zhao Fanling's rash attempt to survive and her strange death, no one dared to take half a step forward. They all surrounded the door and stared at it with terrifying gazes. At this moment, the area that seemed to be the edge of death actually shrunk. Several low-level cultivators that were closest to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's door also seemed to have their vitality taken away. They silently lay on the ground. Many people were like headless flies as they rushed into the air. However, something even more shocking happened. The several people who had rushed into the air had only flown a few feet before they fell back down from the sky without making any sound. This time, no one dared to fly anymore. They just ran around the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall like mortals. Sigh. Xiao Hua sighed. He hurriedly waved his hand and took out several dozen rabbit spirit talismans. Both of his hands continuously struck them out. In a short moment, he urged his magic power and a rabbit spirit formation was set up, protecting Xue Xue and the others within. Senior Xiao. Not far away, Yuchuan didn't dare to stray too far away from Xue Xue and the others. Even when there were people rushing to get out, he was still like this. Seeing Xiao Hua take out so many spirit talismans all of a sudden, his mouth had long since changed to senior. Junior can. Seeing Yuchuan use his finger to point at the spirit formation, Xiao Hua pondered for a moment, then nodded. Since that's the case, Taoist Yu and the disciples can also come over. However, I can't guarantee that I'll really be able to protect everyone. It's good that you have this. Junior can't thank you enough. Yuchuan hurriedly walked into the range of the spirit formation, bowed and said, If we can escape alive today, Junior will definitely thank Senior Xiao. Let's talk about it after we escape. Xiao Hua waved his hand, pointed at Xue Xue and said, If possible, try your best to protect my junior sister. Of course, of course. Yuchuan sat in front of Xue Xue, as if he could really protect her. Darling Xiao, be careful. Xue Xue faintly said. She knew that Xiao Hua definitely wouldn't be like the other cultivators who only cared about their own safety. Because he was Xiao Hua. Don't worry, Xiao Hua nodded towards her. Everyone retreated about 3 meters, then stopped again. Huang Tianla also retreated with everyone under the support of Huang Mengxiang. However, he still seemed to be struggling, as if he wanted to go forward. Taoist Huang, Xiao Hua walked to Huang Tianla's side, frowned and said, Actually, I'm the same as Taoist Zhao Fanling. I really don't want to get involved in the grudges between the Huang clan and others. However, tonight, I've really been dragged into the water by Taoist Huang. Now that Taoist Su Mingyu and the other Taoists have died, the various sects that they belong to probably won't let this matter go. In my opinion, if Taoist Huang knows what's going on, it's better for you to have a good talk with the senior outside the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. As long as that senior isn't like Lan Jingming, insisting on taking our lives, we still have a chance to escape this calamity. -8. Chapter 1948. Alas, fellow Taoist Xiao, Huang Tianla's face was almost devoid of color. At this moment, after hearing Xiao Hua's reprimand, a trace of redness appeared on his face. He sighed and said, Fellow Taoist Xiao, tonight, fellow Taoist has made a great contribution and is the great benefactor of my Tianmin Mountain. This old man won't hide anything from you. My Tianmin Mountain does indeed have many enemies, but since they haven't come looking for us for so many years, perhaps they were exterminated by my Huang clan. Or perhaps they declined on their own. This matter of the Lan clan is absolutely beyond this old man's expectations. Other people, I really don't know of such powerful enemies. Senior Xiao, if my Huang clan's enemies had such powerful abilities, they would have already razed Tianmin Mountain to the ground. Why wait until today? Huang Mengxiang said without any trace of politeness. Moreover, this senior's abilities are so powerful, even more powerful than my Vermilion Bird Flame formation. Why do you need to be so sneaky? Just come out and destroy the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. We won't be able to survive, so why is everyone so scared? Ah? Just as they were talking, there was another wave of wailing and howling. A female cultivator in the middle of the crowd suddenly fell to the ground, similarly dying. This was great. Getting close to the palace gate was dangerous, but not getting close to the palace gate was also dangerous. It seemed like there was no safe place in the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. In the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, a crowd of cultivators lost their heads out of fear and fled in disarray. No one knew where to hide. This scene was no different from the usual panicked crowd in the secular world. Clatter, 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 a wave of trembling teeth due to fright rang out. Everyone near Xiao Hua's left and right were trembling. A frightening aura pervaded the entire place, and even Xiao Hua was no exception. A kind of fear that came from the bottom of his heart flowed along Xiao Hua's blood and quickly spread throughout his entire body. A kind of coldness wrapped around Xiao Hua's entire body. Damn it, which senior is this? Xiao Hua could also be considered to have experienced countless life and death situations, but he had never felt so powerless. Another two screams rang out in succession. Two cultivators collapsed, and the order in which they collapsed was actually facing Xue Xue and the others. This is bad. Xiao Hua didn't know whether his formation could block this strange death or not. He floated in front of the formation. Xiao. Xue couldn't help but call out. Shut up. Xiao Hua shouted and locked his divine sense in front of him, hoping that he would discover something. However, after the time it took to brew a cup of tea, his divine sense was completely empty. Just as Xiao Hua thought that the danger had passed, a sudden gust of cold wind gently blew towards Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua didn't hesitate at all and hurriedly retreated. Then, he released his Buddhist sense again. As before, there was nothing abnormal in the place where Lung Feng was. Xiao Hua stopped and his eyes quickly turned. With a slap of his hand, the cloud-suppressing seal flew out. A bronze brilliance sprinkled down from the top of Xiao Hua's head, firmly protecting him. However, just as the cloud-suppressing seal was summoned, the cold wind blew again and actually went past the brilliance of the cloud-suppressing seal. What kind of divine ability is this? Xiao Hua was greatly shocked. He hurriedly retreated, and without the slightest hesitation, he naturally shot out the fireball technique. With a rumbling sound, the area in front of Xiao Hua's eyes was covered in flames. Xiao Hua didn't withdraw his Buddhist sense. Just as the flames were burning, he suddenly discovered that there was a faintly swaying silhouette in the flames. However, this silhouette didn't seem to be afraid of the flames and disappeared in a flash. At this moment, not far from Xiao Hua's side, another cultivator fell to the ground and no longer breathed. Rise, Xiao Hua extended his hand, and the Samadhi True Fire emerged from his hand. Immediately after, a wall of fire surrounded him. Xiao Hua flicked his hand again, and a wisp of the Samadhi True Fire flew towards the faintly discernible silhouette just now. A deep, strange sound like it came from the throat rang out. Immediately, a humanoid flame appeared from the Samadhi True Fire and screamed. The group of female cultivators all screamed in fright. Ghost. Ghost, of course, it couldn't be seen and could kill without a trace. If it wasn't a ghost, then what was it? Ghost? Although Xiao Hua's heart trembled, since even ghosts were afraid of the Samadhi True Fire, what was he afraid of? Therefore, Xiao Hua didn't hesitate and hurriedly waved his hand again. Outside the rabbit spell formation, a wall of Samadhi True Fire rose. Senior Xiao, save me. Senior Xiao, save me. When everyone saw that Xiao Hua was actually able to use fire to kill ghosts, they all rushed towards Xiao Hua. Many people even wanted to squeeze into the rabbit spell formation. But at the same time that everyone rushed in, a series of blood-curdling screams rang out again. Several cultivators fell under everyone's feet. It was unknown whether they were killed by ghosts or trampled to death. Seeing so many people rushing over, Xiao Hua coldly snorted. His figure flew into the air and shouted, "All of you, stop! In this kind of panic, even this Xiao will be trampled to death by you. Who can save you?" Fellow Taoists, don't panic. Such panic will only cause more people to die. It won't allow Senior Xiao to save you. At this time, Huang Mengxiang also flew into the air and shouted loudly, "All of you, sit down where you are and leave some space between yourselves. If fellow Taoists have any fireball talismans or the like, you can use them to protect yourselves first. Even if there are ghosts or the like, Senior Shao will have time to kill them if there's a gap." When the cultivators heard Huang Mengxiang's reminder, they all came to a sudden realization and quickly sat down. One by one, they took out all the fire attribute yellow talismans they could use and used them to protect themselves. Then, they looked pitifully at Xiaohua. "Do you want to die? Hurry up and get down," Xiaohua said coldly. Hee. Huang Mengxiang didn't seem to be afraid of the others. His figure turned and landed beside Huang Tianla. He even smiled at Xiaohua. Xiaohua didn't have the time and didn't have the mood to do anything ambiguous with this little girl. He released his Buddhist sense and carefully examined, but obviously, although his Buddhist sense left, it couldn't do anything. A sound echoed. One of the female cultivators cried out in alarm. In front of her, a male cultivator with flames on his body silently lay down. "Go." Xiaohua didn't hesitate at all. He waved the Samadhi true fire in his hand, and a slender line of fire flew over. However, before the line of fire flew near the male cultivator, it unexpectedly stopped. Then, as if something had been ignited, a silhouette that was half a head taller than an ordinary person appeared. It let out a hee-hee sound and continuously swayed within the Samadhi true fire. "Go." Xiaohua waved his hand again. Another 4 lines of Samadhi true fire once again flew to the 4 sides where the male cultivator was just now. With a whoosh sound, as expected by Xiaohua, 3 of the lines of Samadhi true fire missed. The Samadhi true fire on the other side succeeded, igniting a ghost. However, a new situation appeared. This ghost seemed to be different from the previous ones. It could actually flutter rapidly. Although it painfully rolled on the ground, it still crashed into the cultivators sitting at the side. In merely a breath's time, several cultivators were affected. The Samadhi true fire was so powerful that when these cultivators touched it, their bodies immediately burned. Sigh. Xiaohua sighed. He flew to the left of these cultivators and reached out to extinguish the Samadhi true fire on their bodies. What should I do? Xiaohua was a little hesitant. These ghosts seemed to be different from the vengeful ghosts Xiaohua encountered in the Flame Forest Swamp. His spiritual sense couldn't see them. But I wonder if the Buddha's Sarira can transcend? The Buddha's Sarira could be considered one of Xiaohua's secrets. At this moment, other than Hanzhu, no other cultivator knew about it. Although the Buddha's Sarira could succeed, the Buddhist sect and the Taoist sect had an inexplicable grudge. Although Xiaohua didn't know much about it, from Hanzhu's words, he could definitely predict the consequences of others discovering the Buddhist sect's divine ability. Therefore, unless it involved his own safety, he didn't plan to reveal it. In addition, Xiaohua forced the spirit-devouring cultivation technique from spirit husbandry sect's Li Dongming in the Flame Forest Swamp. However, it was obvious that the spirit-devouring cultivation technique he obtained was the most basic one. Moreover, Xiaohua didn't have time to comprehend it. Even if he wanted to use it now, he couldn't. "I can't see these ghosts. If I can see them, then the Samadhi true fire can be used." Xiaohua frowned. Suddenly, the Samadhi true fire on Xiaohua's body flickered slightly, showing signs of being extinguished. "Oh my God, there are ghosts that aren't afraid of the Samadhi true fire?" Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly dodged. At the same time, he opened his left hand slightly. He wasn't sure if the delirium dharma eye that could see spiritual energy could see ghosts that couldn't be seen by the naked eye. As the saying goes, the ignorant are fearless. Before Xiaohua saw the ghosts, although he was afraid, he didn't have a creepy feeling. However, when he opened his delirium dharma eye and saw the ghosts, an extremely absurd feeling, as if he had arrived at the Yellow Springs, rushed into his heart. He saw that the ghosts in the delirium dharma eye were light green smoke. They were humanoid. However, some of these humanoid figures were missing arms and legs. Some of them were missing heads and legs. There were even some that didn't have any limbs and were just floating in the air. Not only on the ground, even in the air, there was a lot of light fog flying left and right. The entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall was a place where demons were dancing. Damn it! What's going on? Xiaohua was extremely shocked. Suddenly, he thought of the words of Lan Jingming, who was just killed. Today is officially the 15th day of the 7th month. If you all die, then turn into malicious spirits. The 15th day of the 7th month? Is it the Ghost Festival? As Xiaohua was thinking, he once again heard a series of thunderclaps rumbling outside the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Several dazzling purple lights dazzled his illusion breaker eye, and the ghosts that were slowly pouring into the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall all turned into white mist and disappeared without a trace. Could it be because the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall is a fire-type array? These ghosts entered the palace hall to avoid the lightning tribulation? While Xiaohua was thinking, his hands and feet were not dissatisfied. His left hand was placed on his waist, pretending to move. The flames of the Samadhi true fire in his right hand were like heavenly maidens scattering flowers. Every time a flower fell, a ghost would be ignited. However, correspondingly, Xiaohua was also extremely busy. Many cultivators were affected by the Samadhi true fire of the ghosts. Xiaohua couldn't sit and watch. Moreover, it seemed that only he could control the Samadhi true fire. If he didn't take action, who could? I'll help you. Just as Xiaohua was flustered, a voice sounded. -8. Chapter 1949. Xiaohua raised his head and looked over. It was Huang Mengxiang. Huang Mengxiang's figure flew over like a nimble butterfly, fluttering in front of everyone's eyes. Huang Mengxiang's left hand was waving a wisp of slightly thin true Samadhi fire, but her right hand was waving on some cultivators who had true Samadhi fire on their bodies. After waving a few times, the true Samadhi fire on the cultivators' bodies were all extinguished. Great! Xiaohua came to a realization. This Tianmin Mountain's Huang family probably has the true bloodline of the Vermilion Bird. Huang Mengxiang is the Huang family's daughter of the first wife and also has outstanding aptitude. Being able to learn true Samadhi fire is not considered strange. But how can Huang Mengxiang casually extinguish true Samadhi fire of Xiaohua? Every time, she has to wave several techniques to extinguish a wisp of true Samadhi fire. But even so, Xiaohua can be considered to have obtained assistance. His thoughts on extinguishing the fire were greatly reduced, and he concentrated on killing the hesitating ghosts in the main hall. Just like this, in the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, the wandering ghosts among the cultivators were almost completely eliminated. Even though there were no more cultivators whose lives were taken by the ghosts, Xiaohua's expression did not appear relaxed. After all, in this short period of time, Huang Mengxiang's face already appeared crimson. Clearly, it was because her magic power was insufficient, and from what he saw with his Dharma eye, outside of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's door, there were still many ghosts slowly swimming in. If I were to set up the true Samadhi fire around the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, I would be able to stop the ghosts from invading. However, this is not a long-term solution. My powers are limited after all. These ghosts seem to be inexhaustible. I have to find the reason. Xiaohua pondered for a moment and rubbed his hands. A dozen wisps of true Samadhi fire flew out again, igniting the ghosts closest to the cultivators in the main hall. Afterwards, his figure flew and pounced towards the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's door. His right hand raised again and a firewall technique was cast. Soon after, he waved left and right. Following Xiaohua's gesture, the firewall technique quickly spread along the four walls of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Without waiting for the two firewalls to meet, Xiaohua raised his left and right hands again. 3 wisps of true Samadhi fire simultaneously appeared in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall and also started to spread along the walls of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Xiaohua's method was quite effective. Although the wall of fire couldn't stop the ghosts, after the true Samadhi fire appeared, all the ghosts that rushed into the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall were ignited by the true Samadhi fire. They could no longer approach the cultivators sitting in the center of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Alas, it's still a temporary measure. Xiaohua looked at the Samadhi true fire that was dimming with every ghost that was ignited. He sighed and flew into the air above the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. At this time, All the ghosts in the air were killed by Xiaohua, so it could be considered safe. Seeing that Huang Mengxiang was still extinguishing the true samadhi flames, Xiaohua pinched his chin and looked at the cultivators below him. After a moment, Xiaohua's eyes lit up and he secretly opened his magic eyes. Among the many cultivators, he saw a cultivator whose body was faintly green in color, similar to that of a ghost, appear within Xiaohua's magic eyes. It's him. Xiaohua's phoenix eyes slightly narrowed. He pretended to carelessly pass by that short cultivator who looked like he was only around 10th layer Qi disciple. With a wave of his left and right hand, several streams of true samadhi fire flew down together, charging towards that male cultivator whose face was pale and whose eyes were slightly sunken. Ha ha ha, that male cultivator's face was originally filled with panic. But when he saw Xiaohua's several streams of true samadhi flames rushing towards him, his face revealed astonishment. Immediately after, he laughed loudly. His figure swayed strangely for a while, using some unknown spell. Not only did he dodge the true samadhi flames, his own figure also flew into the air. Xiaohua was slightly shocked, because from what he saw with his magic eyes, a light green smoke floated up from the male cultivator's body, similar to the color of ghosts. Moreover, there wasn't any normal fluctuation of mana. The cultivators next to the male cultivator were also shocked. They didn't think that the culprit was hiding next to them. They all couldn't help but dodge in all directions. Xiaohua, you really are strong. Not only is your mana profound, you also have insight. That male cultivator saw that he was exposed and no longer hid. His body stood in the air and said with a smile, "Are you really a guest of Emoyun village?" Insight? Hearing this, Xiaohua slightly clenched his left hand and said coldly, "This Xiao is naturally a guest of Emoyun village. Of course, this young master is also a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect." What? Are you scared of this young master? Xiaohua didn't dare to lead the calamity to Emoyun village and clearly stated his identity. Imperial Thunder sect? Then no wonder. That cultivator had a face of realization. It's not strange for the Imperial Thunder sect to have a foundation establishment cultivator like you who can control true samadhi fire. Imperial Thunder sect disciple? Huang Tianla also had a face of realization, and Huang Mingxiang's eyes flickered. As for saying this lord is scared of you, you think too highly of yourself. That cultivator laughed again and said, "You're only a foundation establishment cultivator. This lord doesn't put you in my eyes." This lord? Who are you? Xiaohua berated like spring thunder. Many cultivators have no enmity with you. Why did you order ghosts to come and massacre them? Who is this lord? How could a little foundation establishment cultivator like you know? That cultivator said with a strange smile, but then calmly said, "If you want to know this lord's identity, then this lord will tell you how you saw through this lord." Obviously, this cultivator was the same as Lan Jingming, very confident in his concealment. He didn't think that he would be seen through by Xiaohua while hiding on the side. "Why are you so curious about Lan Jingming's question just now?" Xiaohua ridiculed. "Do you think that your actions are flawless and others shouldn't be able to see through it? Could it be that you are the person behind Lan Jingming?" Don't compare this lord with that brat surnamed Lan." The cultivator waved his hand and said disdainfully, "He is just a jumping clown. He actually has the same idea as this lord. This lord didn't want to make a move. I wanted to wait for him to exterminate the Huang family, then this lord would take his life. Who would have thought that a distraction would appear?" "What grievances do you have with the Huang family of Tianmin Mountain?" Xiaohua asked. "This isn't something that a little foundation establishment cultivator like you can care about." The cultivator waved his hand. "How about you first tell me how you found out about this lord?" "Should I tell you?" Xiaohua asked thoughtfully. "Of course, as long as you tell me. This lord will also tell you some things that you want to know." Sigh. "It's actually very simple." Xiaohua extended a finger and shook it slightly. "If this Xiao tells you, you may not necessarily believe it. Are you stalling for time?" The cultivator asked curiously. "I have never heard of the Imperial Thunder sect disciple being so long-winded. If you don't say it, how do you know this lord won't believe you?" This Xiao has already used the poison of the green python to detoxify all the cultivators in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. They also gave me their spirit stones, yellow talismans, pills, and other things as rewards. Only you didn't give anything. You say this Xiao doesn't remember you? How can I not suspect you? -8. Chapter 1950. W. What? The cultivator's face turned green. There are so many people in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, but only I didn't give you spirit stones. This, you still remember? Yeah. What's so strange about it? Xiaohua said somewhat proudly. I've always been stingy. Now that I've spent a lot of money to get the Azure Python's poison, there's actually someone who didn't give me spirit stones. I naturally have to remember. This isn't strange at all. Since you don't need to detoxify it, then you definitely aren't poisoned. But how can a 10th level Qi refinement cultivator not be poisoned? Just thinking about it makes me feel strange. Like this, I can casually use my heal to know you have a problem. This, the cultivator didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Can I be like you and not drink the spirit wine? This spirit wine is extremely useful for Qi refinement cultivators. If you don't drink it, doesn't that mean you don't need the spirit wine's spirit energy? Isn't that even more obvious? Xiao Hua spoke frankly with assurance, as if he had a card up his sleeve. Damn it, the cultivator laughed bitterly. Of course I drank it. Of course I know there's poison in the spirit wine. But I'm a ghost cultivator. How can I let you detoxify it? With magic power everywhere, you'll naturally be able to see through me. Ghost cultivator? Xiao Hua was stunned. He'd only heard of soul cultivators, but he'd never heard of ghost cultivators. With a sweep of his gaze, he saw that Huang Tianla was also stunned. Presumably, he also didn't know. What's a ghost cultivator for? Xiao Hua asked. Hee, do I have to trouble myself to tell you this? The cultivator clapped his hands and took out a palm-sized triangular flag. Won't it be fine if you use your heal to think? Okay, Xiao Hua didn't hesitate, the true samadhi fire in his hand flourishing. I'll ask one more question. I don't know what kind of grudge fellow Taoist has with the Huang family that you can't let us innocent cultivators go. Sorry, the cultivator said coldly. I didn't plan on telling you these things. After he finished speaking, the cultivator waved his hand and a faint black-green mist gathered around his body, protecting him. Immediately after, a few wisps of faint green mist were released from the small flag, attacking the fire wall at the entrance of the hall. Hee, fellow Taoist, do you think I, Xiao, am transparent? Xiao Hua waved his hand, and several true samadhi flames flew out, wanting to block that green fog. But contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, when the samadhi true fire flew through the green mist, the flames actually dimmed, as if they were about to be extinguished. This is bad. This guy isn't afraid of the true samadhi fire. Xiao Hua immediately understood. Indeed, that cultivator sneered and said, it's merely the samadhi true fire. Even though it's rare in Dawn Rain continent, it's nothing more than firewood against us ghost cultivators. Go. Seeing that the true samadhi fire was useless, Xiao Hua used his divine telekinesis and a dot of green light flew out from under the cultivator's feet. 16 sword gleams were like 16 shuttles, enveloping the cultivator from top to bottom. Whoosh whoosh. Just as the dream executioner's seemingly random, but in reality, very methodical attacks, the dark green mist around the cultivator's body expanded. His entire body was covered by the mist. After the 16 flying swords pierced through the mist, it was as if they had pierced nothing. There was no obstruction at all as they passed through the mist. Xiao Hua was slightly surprised. He clenched his teeth and said, Split. Immediately, the 16 sword gleams once again split into 32. Like swimming fishes, they once again turned around and circled around the cultivator within the mist. Ha ha ha, the cultivator's laughter wreaked havoc within the mist. You're a thunder-controlling school cultivator, and you actually know the flying swords of a sword cultivator. And it's so strange. What a pity. How could you understand the power of a ghost cultivator? What should I do now? Xiao Hua couldn't help but think of the Buddha Saraira again. and at this time, the green mist had already hit the wall of fire. The flames that were still burning fiercely just now were as if they had been doused with water and were instantly extinguished. The true samadhi fire in the middle that had captured the ghost was also entangled by the mist, and the flames gradually extinguished. Roar at this time. Outside the palace, there was actually a roar. That sound seemed to have come from the outer realms, but it also seemed to be filled with anger towards the world. Motherfucker, what did I encounter today? Needless to say, from this sound, one could tell that the ghost outside was probably even more vigorous. At the same time that everyone in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall was trembling in fear, Xiao Hua's eyes looked at the human figure within the black and green mist and thought in confusion. This ghost cultivator wasn't afraid of poison. He saw through the nine-headed dove's poison and even drank it. He wasn't afraid of the dream executioner or the true samadhi fire. Presumably, magic treasures like the cloud-suppressing seal and the sun-leaf fan also couldn't do anything. Xiao Hua's bottom line had already been approached. Little Yellow, Xiao Hua's mind entered the space. Unfortunately, Little Yellow didn't wake up. Go. Xiao Hua's mind withdrew. With a wave of his hand, the thunder palm struck out with a kacha sound. Immediately after, his hands rubbed together. The great confinement technique and the freezing technique were all cast out as if they didn't need any magic power. You little cultivator, your magic power is actually not bad. That cultivator was a bit astonished. However, although his tone was somewhat praising, other than the thunder palm dispersing the mist a bit, it didn't have any other effect. Ka-cha-cha! Another thunderous sound rang out, and it seemed to have hit the roof of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. This sound was so loud that even Xiao Hua was scared to the point that he trembled. And clearly, the ghost cultivator's fog also trembled a few times. Could it be that this lightning tribulation is related to the ghost cultivator? Xiao Hua thought to himself. He's using the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's formation as a lightning tribulation? Or maybe he's using ghosts to block the lightning tribulation, using the lives and blood essence of the cultivators in the palace hall to set up a formation to block the lightning tribulation? However, the ghost cultivator clearly didn't allow Xiao Hua to think any further. He waved his hand in the mist, and the small triangular flag flew into the air. Dense mist gushed out from the small flag. This mist once again produced a suction force and sucked in the numerous ghosts that rushed into the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. One after another, blood-curdling screams gradually resounded from the small flag. Xiao Hua faintly opened his left and right eyes and saw the miserable scene within. That small flag seemed to be a fist-sized hole. As the green ghosts were sucked in, it gradually enlarged. When it was about a foot in size, a cry came from the hole. Immediately, an evil spirit with a head as big as a bucket and a body as big as an infant crawled out from the rolling black-green mist of the small flag. Wah! That evil spirit let out a cry, and a trace of black blood flowed out from the corner of its mouth. A few ghosts screamed as they were sucked into the evil spirit's mouth, and that evil spirit licked its small mouth as if it had eaten something and stood up from the mist. At this moment, not only could Xiao Hua see it, even the ordinary cultivators could see it. Everyone was so frightened that their hair stood on end as they looked at the infant standing in the air in disbelief. This infant was only 2 feet in size, and its bald head was 1 foot in size. The facial features on its head were actually complete, but they were all dripping with blood. Its pair of eyes only had the whites of its eyes, and there was basically no pupil. Both of its arms were broken and seemed to still be dripping with blood. A bleak and cold aura was emitted from the infant's body, and the surroundings seemed to be sealed in ice. The white of the infant evil spirit's eyes moved. Although its pupils couldn't be seen, everyone felt as if they had been swept by a poisonous snake, and goosebumps gradually appeared on their skin. Wah! The evil spirit let out another cry. It simply didn't wait for the ghost cultivator's instructions, and suddenly pounced on the cultivator closest to it. The crowd of cultivators fled while wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves, but that evil spirit was unexpectedly extremely fast. It grabbed 2 male cultivators in one go. Those 2 male cultivators were around the 11th layer of the Qi refinement realm. They desperately threw out all of their yellow talismans, but every single one of them turned into talisman paper under the ghost chi. They were simply unable to injure the evil spirit. Then, the evil spirit opened its mouth and bit on one of the men's arms. The male cultivator let out a blood-curdling scream and fainted from the pain. That arm was actually bitten off by the evil spirit. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It ate it bite by bite, just like an ordinary person eating a lotus root. Ha ha ha, the reputation of the 5 evil spirits is indeed well-deserved. The ghost cultivator's voice rang out. It sounded very horrifying. That evil spirit was truly formless and flew extremely fast. Xiaohua thought that it was coming for him and was on guard. He didn't expect that the evil spirit would suddenly rush towards ordinary cultivators and was somewhat caught off guard. At this moment, when he heard the ghost cultivator's voice, he raised his eyes to look at Xue Xue, who wasn't far from him. Xue Xue was still as calm as before. She was within the true samadhi fire and similarly calmly looking at him. Forget it. If this ghost cultivator isn't eliminated, Xue Xue and my lives will be in danger. As Xiaohua pondered, his figure flashed and he pounced towards the ghost cultivator. With a wave of his hand, the great wisdom sword appeared from the space. Hee, although this lord is a ghost cultivator, my strength is equivalent to your Dao sect's golden core cultivator. You, a mere foundation establishment cultivator, dare to challenge me? The ghost cultivator laughed wildly within the mist. He pointed his finger and several strands of mist flew out like arms, rushing towards the true samadhi fire around Xiaohua's body. With a sizzling sound, the true samadhi fire gradually extinguished within the mist. Xiaohua's physical body began to appear. With a phoenix cry, Xiaohua's phoenix dharma body flew out. The 200-meter-tall dharma body protected Xiaohua. It suddenly flapped its wings, and the several strands of mist actually became much dimmer from the beating. You actually have the bloodline of the phoenix? When the ghost cultivator saw this, he again asked curiously, but this dharma body, how can it have the aura of the netherworld? Eat this young master's sword first. How could Xiaohua answer him? Seeing that the distance was about right, he immediately used the bright thunder escape. With a rumbling sound of thunder, he instantly flew to the side of the ghost cultivator's mist. Humph, even that strange flying sword of yours can't stab me. The ghost cultivator was clearly a bit arrogant. With a bang, the great wisdom sword precisely hit the mist. With a blood-curdling scream, a green drop of blood sprayed out from the mist. How can this magic artifact of yours hit me? Eat this young master's sword again. Xiaohua urged the phoenix dharma body and grabbed down from the air, while his right hand once again raised the great wisdom sword and struck down. Strange. A sound that made one's teeth clench came from the ghost cultivator's mouth. When the evil ghost that was sweetly gnawing on the cultivator's flesh heard this, it reluctantly took the cultivator's corpse in its hand and rapidly flew over, pouncing towards Xiaohua's back. Go. Immediately after, the ghost cultivator's explosive shout was heard again. A boundless green mist rushed out, directly hitting the chest of the phoenix dharma body. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for it. -8. Chapter 1951. With a mournful cry, the phoenix dharma body was suddenly flipped over and landed far away on the other side of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Hiss! Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. This was the first time his phoenix dharma body had been hit so fiercely. His chest also felt a sharp pain. However, the falling momentum of the heavy sword in Xiaohua's right hand did not change. Humph! The ghost cultivator coldly snorted. A pitch-black round shield that was like a mirror appeared in his hand. With a loud kong sound, the great wisdom heavy sword struck the round shield. Traces of cracks appeared on the round shield, and at this moment, Xiaohua seemed to have also been struck by a powerful force. His body actually lost its balance, and his entire body was flung out horizontally. But at this moment, the flames in Xiaohua's hand reappeared, and his palm struck the shrinking mist. With a sizzling sound, as expected, the true samadhi fire was unable to ignite the green mist. You really don't give up? Although the ghost cultivator was mocking, he was actually somewhat weak. Clearly, he was injured by Xiao Hua. But just as he said this, the green mist had also just retracted around the ghost cultivator's body. It looked like a green Taoist robe. At this time, Xiao Hua's unbalanced body was facing him. Xiao Hua opened his mouth and a scarlet flame flew out. Once this flame flew out, it immediately cut through the ghost cultivator's green mist like a meteor and rushed into his body. Ah? The ghost cultivator obviously treated this flame without heat as one thing. But when he saw the scarlet flame actually fly into his body, he was immediately shocked. The mist around his body that had already turned into a green Taoist robe quickly rolled and once again wrapped around the ghost cultivator. How can there still be time? Xiao Hua sneered. He waved his hand and activated a secret technique. With a bang, a scarlet flame ignited within the green mist. That green facing the scarlet flame was extremely strange. Behind Xiao Hua, the baby-like evil spirit flew over. It stretched out its fat, palmless arm and strangely grabbed at Xiao Hua. Following the evil spirit's hand gesture, a desolate and sharp aura arrived first and grabbed Xiao Hua's arm. There was a sound that seemed to be laughter, but before the evil spirit's bloody mouth could reach Xiao Hua's arm, Xiao Hua extended his right hand, and the Prajna heavy sword unexpectedly struck the evil spirit's abdomen. This was the evil spirit's true cry. A fist-sized hole had actually been pierced through its chest by the Prajna heavy sword. It had been pierced through. Caw, with a phoenix cry, the phoenix battle form regrouped and flew to the top of the evil spirit's head. Its sharp claws slashed down and hit the evil spirit's back. This baby-like evil spirit seemed to only have the intelligence of a baby. It did not know how to dodge, and the phoenix's claws sliced its back in half. The evil ghost turned its head and opened its small mouth. A long red tongue flew out and pierced towards the forehead of the phoenix's celestial body. An incomparably fierce wind and bone-piercing cold air immediately pressed towards Xiao Hua's forehead. Whoosh! Xiao Hua was greatly shocked. The phoenix's celestial body flapped its wings, wanting to block in front of it. Moreover, the celestial body also used the style of the Big Dipper God Fist to dodge with all its might. With a light sound, the evil spirit's tongue pierced through the phoenix's celestial body's wings. At the same time, it also pierced into the side of the phoenix's celestial body's forehead. Immediately, a sharp pain came from Xiao Hua's forehead. Xiao Hua shouted loudly. He raised the Prajna heavy sword and used all the strength in his body to hit the evil spirit's body. It seemed that with every hit, the pain would be lessened by a bit. The evil spirit was also very anxious. Its tongue turned, twisting like a soft sword, and also stabbing towards Xiao Hua's forehead. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua's main body was not the phoenix's celestial body. He only needed to twist his body slightly to dodge the tongue. Moreover, the Prajna heavy sword was lifted upwards. The originally edgeless heavy sword was now like an incomparably sharp sword, easily cutting the tongue in half. The evil spirit was very anxious. Its small body bent down and opened its mouth. A gloomy and cold wind that could freeze a person to death was produced and blew towards Xiao Hua. Seeing the Samadhi true fire around Xiao Hua's body dying in the cold wind, Xiao Hua opened his mouth and was about to spit out another spirit fire. But right at this moment, the triangular flag that the ghost cultivator had raised in the air suddenly shrunk rapidly. A powerful suction force was produced from the fog on the flag. The infant-like evil spirit's 4 limbs moved rapidly, struggling with all its might, but it was still unable to break free. Xiao Hua did not have the time to look at the evil spirit being sucked back into the small flag. Instead, his figure moved rapidly. As he dodged, he used lightning escape to dodge to another level. But even so, half of Xiao Hua's arm was still blown by the cold wind. Immediately, it was ice-cold and abnormally numb. Even the protective magic treasure was unable to block this cold wind. Xiao Hua was greatly shocked. He hurriedly urged his true essence to rapidly flow through the meridians in his right arm, wanting to get rid of this ice. Unfortunately, after several attempts, there was no effect. Only when Xiao Hua finally urged the dragon transformation art did his right arm gradually regain feeling. Too powerful. Xiao Hua sighed and raised his eyes to look at the ghost cultivator who was ignited by the spirit fire. At this moment, the scarlet spirit fire had already gradually emitted a green fog. Within the fire, there was still a surge and some heart-wrenching screams. But at this moment, everything had already calmed down. Only the scarlet spirit fire was left burning the green fog, slowly engulfing it. Sigh, it's finally over. At this moment, the magic power in Xiao Hua's body had already been consumed to less than half. His right arm was slightly drooping as he resisted the indescribable pain on his forehead. He raised his eyes to look at the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. The surviving cultivators were only less than half of the previous ones. Without the ghost cultivators urging, the ghosts could only rely on their instincts to wander around. They were no longer like a swarm of bees from before. Although he could occasionally see one or two cultivators silently fall to the ground, these ghosts were no longer in Xiao Hua's eyes. Darling Xiao, the Samadhi true fire above the rabbit array was still burning. Not a single ghost entered the array. Xue Xue and the others were naturally safe and sound. Seeing Xiao Hua injured, Xue Xue couldn't help but cry out. Hee, I'm fine. Xiao Hua let out a long sigh and waved his hand as if relieved of a heavy burden. The things that happened tonight really made him feel an indescribable feeling. Strange things happened one after another. Fortunately, he had a lot of methods. Now, he could finally deal with them all. Now, he only needed to use the Samadhi true fire to kill these ghosts one by one. Although there was only less than half of the cultivators left in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, it was still better than all of them dying. Kachacha, a series of thunderclaps struck the roof of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. The entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall slightly shook. The Vermilion Bird Great Blazing Flame Array on the roof of the Palace Hall faintly flickered with brilliance. Xiao Hua was just about to wield the Samadhi True Fire, but when he heard this thunderclap, he couldn't help but be stunned on the spot. Shang Qinghe died. Lan Jingming also died. The last ghost cultivator that appeared was also killed by the spirit fire. But this lightning tribulation, why hasn't it dissipated? Could it be that this lightning tribulation doesn't belong to that ghost cultivator whose strength is comparable to gold core? -8. Chapter 1952. At this moment, clapping sounds came from not far away. Xiao Hua looked up and saw that it was Huang Mengxiang. A smile appeared on Huang Mengxiang's face, the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and he said while walking, Xiao Hua, you are indeed worthy of being a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, really beyond this servant's expectations. Sigh, a little Foundation Establishment cultivator actually killed a Foundation Establishment cultivator who controlled the Vermilion Bird Formation and a ghost cultivator whose strength was comparable to a gold core middle stage cultivator. I feel strange. Besides the Dharma body, flying sword, Samadhi true fire, oh, and your strange crimson fire, what other tricks do you have? Xiang Yang Yu was shocked. She took 2 steps forward and tried to grab hold of Huang Mengxiang. But Huang Mengxiang turned his head slightly and stared at Yin Yu. In the blink of an eye, Yang Yu fell to the ground. Xiang Huang Liang and Huang Tianle were shocked and shouted, Fellow Taoist Huang, don't shout. She is not your Huang Mengxiang. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and said coldly, I'm afraid she is another ghost who wants to take over someone's body. Ah? Huang Liang and Huang Tianle stopped and stood there in shock. Hee, are you surprised? Huang Mengxiang turned around and glanced at them, his eyes glowing with a faint green color. The Huang family of Tianmin Mountain has done too many shameful things. Today, they are here to seek revenge. Hee, this is the cycle of the heavenly Tao. They have done all kinds of bad things. When the time comes, they will take revenge. Senior, Huang Tianle said in a trembling and sorrowful voice, when I pursued Lan Jingming, I felt that I had let down the Lan family, so I didn't dare to fight back. I only asked that he let the other innocent fellow Taoists go. Later on, I don't know about this ghost cultivator. After thinking about it, I really don't understand. He is a cultivator whose strength is comparable to a gold core stage cultivator. He can wipe out my Huang family at any time. Why did he wait until today to act? Moreover, I can't see through Senior's cultivation. It must be similar to the ghost cultivator just now. But why did you only act today? What grudge does my Huang family have with Senior? Anyway, I can't escape today. Can Senior explain the matter clearly? Why don't you let this old man die in peace? Ha ha ha, Huang Mengxiang laughed, his long hair flying. You want to be a ghost who understands everything? In my hands, the Huang family of Tianmin Mountain can't even be ghosts. Kacha, Kacha. Another series of explosions rang out, and the heavenly thunder shook the entire Vermilion Bird Palace. The Vermilion Bird flame array on top of the palace rapidly flickered, and then its color dimmed. The runes on top of the array began to fade, and then they gradually fell off. The earth and stones under the runes also began to fall. This lightning tribulation is indeed yours. Xiao Hua was extremely astonished in his heart, but his expression did not change. He coldly said, "Looks like you're afraid of this lightning tribulation and want to hide in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall to avoid the lightning tribulation? Humph, with my cultivation, why would I need to rely on the Vermilion Bird flame formation to avoid the tribulation lightning?" Huang Mengxiang sneered and said, "This slave wanted to hide in Huang Mengxiang's body and see if I could avoid the thunder tribulation. I didn't expect that the dream mirage butterfly's egg would be destroyed by you. If Huang Mengxiang hadn't awakened, maybe this slave would have been able to escape this 10,000-year Great Tribulation." Ah, 10,000-year Great Tribulation. Xiao Hua was shocked. Unfortunately, it was messed up by your little foundation establishment for no reason. Tell me, shouldn't this slave properly thank you? As Huang Mengxiang spoke, he didn't seem to make any movements. He only raised his head and opened his eyes. A powerful suction force was generated and directly rolled towards Xiao Hua. This suction force was very strange. It was sucking in Xiao Hua's divine sense, eyes, and so on. Feeling his own divine sense involuntarily break away, his eyes also involuntarily looked towards Huang Mengxiang's eyes, and those eyes seemed to contain endless mysteries and endless charm. Xiao Hua was greatly shocked. The magic power in his entire body surged, and the Samadhi true fire in his hand was waved out, and the phoenix celestial body also broke away from his body. Alas, the Samadhi true fire flew in front of Huang Mengxiang. Huang Mengxiang raised his tender white little hand, and with a pa-pa-pa, he randomly slapped it. As if he was slapping some fireflies, he extinguished them one by one. It seemed like he wasn't injured at all. What made Xiao Hua's heart tremble even more was that just as the phoenix celestial body broke away, the suction force in Huang Mengxiang's eyes increased greatly. That 20-something feet tall phoenix celestial body actually struggled as if it was also going to be sucked into it. Bad, Xiao Hua suddenly thought. His phoenix celestial body was formed by the wind of the netherworld, and there was even the soul essence of the fire ape and Chaoanai within it. Those were all not much different from ghosts. His own divine sense was still being sucked away. Wasn't the phoenix celestial body also being taken away by someone? Withdraw. Xiao Hua hurriedly withdrew the phoenix celestial body. His entire body used the ethereal steps and strangely slid within the suction force, escaping far away. That's strange. What kind of magic is that? How come this slave has never seen it before? Huang Mengxiang called out strangely. Right at this time, rumble, 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 the sound of rolling thunder fell down. With a series of kakakad sounds, the roof of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall was immediately destroyed. The one zhang tall roof fell down with a whop sound, smashing right in the center of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, following which, a torrential downpour passed through this space and fell inside the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. With a kachad sound, a pile of earth and rocks fell inside the palace hall. Fortunately, there were no cultivators in the center of the palace hall at this time, and no one was injured. With a kachad sound, following the fall of the palace hall's roof, the Vermilion Bird blazing flame formation was completely destroyed. A purple heavenly lightning as thick as a thumb immediately fell down, striking right at Huang Mengxiang. Huang Mengxiang raised her head, and a green brilliance flashed in her eyes. Dozens of green halos flew out in succession, rushed into the air and blocked the heavenly lightning. ZZZT, 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 with dozens of sounds, the green halos were destroyed by the heavenly lightning, and the heavenly lightning also disappeared at the same time. Sigh, this girl's physical body is still not very useful, Huang Mengxiang said in a low voice. Under this servant's charm, such a genius actually appeared. If another 10,000 years passed, she would be able to become very useful. While speaking, a transparent human figure with black, white, and green flowing on its body gradually came out from Huang Mengxiang's physical body, and Huang Mengxiang collapsed on the ground, unconscious. You. Xiaohua was stunned. You're actually a ghost? What? Can't this servant be a ghost? That ghost flew into the air and coldly said. The dark red dot between her eyebrows was especially obvious. Roar, the ghost rushed into the air, and with a wave of her hand, a hurricane surged around her body. The countless ghosts in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall were all swept up by the hurricane and transformed into wisps of green light that flew into the ghost's body. Following the disappearance of the ghost, the green souls in the bodies of many cultivators were also extracted. They let out horrifying screams and flew into the ghost's body. For some reason, the souls of Huang Tianla, Huang Meng, and a few other Tianmen Mountain's Huang family disciples were not extracted. Following the absorption of the souls, the ghost's body began to show 5 colors and gradually formed into a young girl. This young girl's facial features were delicate and pretty, and she looked somewhat similar to Huang Mengxiang. This formation of yours is actually quite interesting. Within the hurricane, the true Samadhi fire on the rabbit's formation had already been extinguished. However, the formation still flickered with a weak brilliance and was barely holding on. The girl said somewhat strangely, "You really have a lot of tricks up your sleeve." Seeing the ghost float towards the formation, Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. At this time, he already didn't have any more powerful tricks up his sleeve. He didn't dare to hesitate any longer and opened his mouth, spitting out another spirit fire. He pointed his finger, and the true essence within his meridians rapidly flowed. He stirred up all the remaining magic power in his body to activate the spirit fire. That spirit fire was like a fire snake, and it pounced towards the ghost. What kind of fire is this? That ghost opened her eyes, and unexpectedly, a dark red netherworld fire also rushed out, blocking in front of the spirit fire. With a boom, the netherworld fire was actually ignited by the spirit fire, and following the netherworld fire, it burned towards the ghost. Ouch! The ghost was greatly alarmed, and Xiaohua's heart was instead filled with joy. Unfortunately, just as the spirit fire flew in front of the ghost's eyes suddenly changed, turning into 7 eyes, forming the shape of 7 stars. Moreover, from those 7 eyes, 7 kinds of flame-like brilliance sprayed out, blocking in front of the spirit fire. With a squeak-squeak sound, the 7 kinds of flame-like brilliance almost turned white, blocking the scarlet-red spirit fire. The two entangled with each other and eliminated each other. In no less than half a cup of tea's time, the spirit fire gradually disappeared, and the 7 kinds of brilliance also died out. Xiaohua's magic power was completely gone, and he stood in midair. Although the earth expansion technique in his body was doing its best to refine the earth crystal Yao milk, it simply couldn't quench his thirst. Ha ha ha, your flame still can't beat this servant's 7 eyes amorous passion fire. The ghost laughed loudly, flew into midair, and stretched out her hand to grab Xiaohua's forehead. Xiaohua opened his mouth and spat out another spirit fire. The ghost was greatly alarmed and hurriedly dodged, but Xiaohua's magic power was completely gone, and he simply couldn't control the spirit fire. That spirit fire could only stop in front of Xiaohua's eyes. Ha ha ha, so it's because your magic power has been overdraft. The ghost laughed loudly. Like I said, a puny little foundation establishment cultivator can block this servant. So what does this servant's several tens of thousands of years of cultivation count for? Several tens of thousands of years? Xiaohua's eyes stared straight. Kachacho at this time. Another bolt of heavenly lightning fell. The ghost raised her head and 7 rays of fire flew out from her 7 eyes, forcibly extinguishing the heavenly lightning. Damn it! This is a real lightning tribulation. At this critical moment, Xiaohua still had the leisure to think about the lightning tribulation he went through first. As expected, each bolt of heavenly lightning is more powerful than the last. The ghost faced the sky, looked at the ceiling that was like the mouth of a well, and sighed. Endless lightning tribulation. Today is this servant's tribulation. Let the heavenly lightning come even more fiercely. This servant also wants to vent all the hatred in my heart on the Huang family. Immediately, the ghost turned her head, looked at the rabbit formation, looked at Xue Xue, and laughed. Hee, this is your little lover, right? This servant also wants you to have a taste of the different paths of humans and ghosts, the feeling of being separated by yin and yang. As she spoke, she stretched out her hand. That hand suddenly elongated, and in an instant, it touched the rabbit formation that was several zhang away. What was even more strange was that although that hand was blocked by the rabbit formation, it suddenly turned into liquid and gradually forced its way into the formation. -8. Chapter 1953. This is bad. Seeing this, Xiaohua was somewhat caught off guard and was greatly alarmed. He himself understood that the rabbit array should have 360 talismans. He only had the ability to refine dozens of talismans and was still far from being able to complete the array. The ghost breaking through like this would definitely reveal a flaw. Xiaohua clearly still underestimated the ghost cultivation. Just as he sent out his thoughts, the liquid had already entered the array. Once the liquid entered the array, it immediately transformed into a hand again. Although Xue Xue's butterfly orchid had already been released, the fluttering butterfly was simply a fallen leaf in that strange hand. The lightning on the lightning whip was even more like an itch. That hand didn't care at all. Without waiting for Xue Xue to resist, it grabbed Xue Xue's neck. How is it? Is your heart aching? Or are you preparing to escape in your heart? The ghost's 7 eyes once again transformed into 2 eyes. Accompanied by a delicate and pale face, it actually had a bit of a playful appearance. Put Xue Xue down. I'll let you do whatever you want with me. Xiaohua opened his mouth and sucked the spiritual fire into his mouth. Ha ha ha. You can still be considered a little cultivator with some affection. The ghost laughed loudly and said, You think you can escape? Do you think your servant will be deceived by your hypocrisy? That I'll let you go? Ha ha ha. In this world, even family affection can be betrayed. What affection can still be real? The ghost sneered and said, If you kill yourself right now, I might consider letting this girl's soul reincarnate as a human. Xiaohua, don't listen to her. At this moment, Xue Xue shouted, I've already written everything on a jade slip. You can escape. I definitely won't blame you. Jade slip? Xiaohua naturally thought of that pink jade slip, but how could he leave? Slightly shaking his head, Xiaohua smiled and said, Wife, if you have something to say, just say it. Why bother with a jade slip? Right now, I don't have any magic power in my body. How can I escape from this ghost's evil clutches? What she said was nothing more than watching a play. Sigh, Xue Xue knew that Xiaohua wouldn't lie to her. Moreover, she also saw Xiaohua's weakness after using the spiritual fire. She only sighed and said, Husband, this is also good. Although you and I can't dual cultivate, my heart is already yours. Now that you and I can die together, it can be said that we can live in the same bed, die together, and be a pair of mandarin ducks with the same name. She's much happier than Little Cabbage. AI, husband, can you let me take another look at Little Cabbage? If you and I are no longer around, who knows who will eat its meat? Xiaohua bitterly smiled. He didn't expect that Xue Xue would still be thinking about the Little Cabbage at the moment of death. So, he waved his hand and took out the wooden basin containing the Little Cabbage from the space. He smiled and said, Wife, don't worry. Even if this husband dies with you, the Little Cabbage will still be fine. Absolutely no one will be able to eat its meat. Looking at the Little Cabbage swimming in the wooden basin, Xue Xue muttered, AI, poor Little Cabbage, I won't be able to see you again. I don't know where your other Little Cabbage is. I can't let you accompany your Yulang Jun. Husband, Do you think the two of us will turn into two little fish after we die, swimming freely in the cold river? No. Even if we change, we can't change into fish again. We will be eaten by people. Xiao Hua quickly said. Then what will we change into? Xue Xue and Xiao Hua had already put aside life and death and actually talked about it lovingly. Butterfly transformation. Xiao Hua shouted, "You and I will become two beautiful butterflies. Early in the morning, we will drink the sweet rain, and at night, we will be friends with the fragrant grass." Great. Xue Xue clapped her hands and said, just as husband said, "Butterfly transformation, butterfly transformation." At this time, the ghost's voice was unexpectedly mournful. Her eyes were watery as she muttered, "If this servant can transform into a butterfly together with you, Lang Jun, wouldn't that be the best thing in the world?" Kachacha, the third heavenly thunder, unexpectedly hit the ghost's head. "Ah, you Lang Jun!" The ghost screamed. Lightning lingered around her body. The ghost hand that was holding Xue Xue's neck immediately withdrew. You are little cabbage?" At this time, if Xiao Hua still didn't know who this ghost was, then he was really an idiot. Seeing the dark red on the ghost's forehead, he said in astonishment, "Let this servant see your little cabbage." The ghost said in a low voice, "Please." Xiao Hua put down the wooden basin. "Ah, little cabbage, this servant hasn't seen you for many years." The ghost sighed and said, "I didn't think that you, who were fighting to be eaten, would be alive today. Such a kind and affectionate couple, how could this servant separate you two?" "Little cabbage, senior." Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, "I didn't think that, senior. Actually what? Isn't it just a lonely ghost?" Little cabbage's gaze passed through the hole in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall and looked at the horizon. There, thunder rolled and purple lightning arcs streaked across the night sky. She said in a low voice, "A wild ghost that has been struggling at death's door for several tens of thousands of years. Senior little cabbage." At this time, Xue Xue also gathered her courage and asked with a smile, "Why didn't Senior turn into a fish?" What about that scholar? He also didn't turn into a fish? Did he also turn into a ghost? You guys aren't together? Little girl, how can the legends of the secular world be true? Little Cabbage smiled and said, "This servant's name is Huang Yi. There are more than 1,000 legends about this servant on this cold river, but how can they know the truth? They only use their own appearance to make the story go in the direction they want it to go. If eating little cabbage can make lovers get married, then there wouldn't be any heartless people in this world. This legend is nothing but a lie made up by the fishermen on this cold river, a trick to swindle money." Soon after, Huang Yi looked at Huang Tianla, whose face was ashen and whose expression was indescribable. He sneered and said, "I'm afraid that there are no real records in the Huang family's ancient records, right?" Ancestor. Huang Tianla said ancestor for a long time, not knowing how to address him. This servant has already broken all ties with the Huang family of Tianmin Mountain. You don't need to call this servant anything. Just calling me senior is enough." Huang Yi sneered and said, "If you know what this servant did to Tianmin Mountain, I'm afraid that you won't even call me senior." "Say, senior." Huang Tianla said, "My Tianmin Mountain's Huang family's ancient records do indeed have such records, but unfortunately, it's not detailed, only a few sentences. However, since Senior is a member of Tianmin Mountain and also has the surname Huang, then Senior will always be an ancestor in this junior's eyes." Ha ha ha, if it's not detailed, how would they dare to write it in detail? Huang Yi laughed loudly and said coldly, "Do you know why the Huang family of Tianmin Mountain hasn't had many children after this servant? Why are there so few of their children with aptitude? This servant can tell you right now. It was this servant who put a curse on your Huang family. Because of this curse, there are no children and aptitude is limited." Talisman? Xiao Hua's heart stirred as he recalled the Zhu clan of Jinghua City. -8. Chapter 1954. Senior, what did my ancestor do to you? Why do you hate the Huang family so much? Huang Tianla's expression suddenly changed as he asked, "No matter what, The blood of the Huang family flows in Senior's body. Ha ha ha, you're right. It's precisely because I have the Huang family's vermilion bird sacred bloodline that I was able to use my sacred blood to refine the Seven Eyes' amorous passion flame and resist the lightning tribulation for tens of thousands of years. I'm not afraid of Xiaohua's strange flame. Huang Yi first laughed, then sighed. If it weren't for that, I would have killed the entire Tianmin mountain with my own hands. Now that I've spared you all, it can be considered a favor. Is the curse so powerful? Xiaohua's eyes turned a few times, and he said in a low voice, Junior saw a secular family with the surname Zhu in Jinghua City. They were cursed, but it seemed to be cured with this pill. As he spoke, Xiaohua waved his hand and took out a parasol pill. Jinghua City's Zhu family? Huang Yi waved his hand, and the parasol pill flew in front of his eyes. He seemed to be thinking, why is this family's surname so familiar? I seem to have heard of it somewhere. Your pill is a bit strange. Huang Yi's 7 eyes appeared, and after 7 flames flashed, he said, the material used to refine this pill is ordinary, but it seems to contain something rich in vitality. I'm afraid this thing can break the curse. Of course, the curse is a sinister art. It's related to the cultivation of the caster and the degree of sinister poison of the curse. I'm afraid your pill can't break my curse. As he spoke, he waved his hand, and the parasol pill flew into Xiaohua's hand. This pill is very rare. It's effective against sinister arts, even the poison of the 9-headed dove just now. You could have used this to detoxify the poison just now. There's no need to use the poison of the green python. Junior is ignorant and inexperienced. I really didn't think so much. Xiaohua scratched his head and said awkwardly as he took the parasol pill. Senior. Shui walked out of the rabbit spell formation and accompanied Xiaohua. She still asked with concern, Senior still hasn't said how you became like this and how you endured for so many years. Also, where is Yu Zhongquan and Yu Shushen? Looking at Shui, Huang Yi smiled and said, Yu Lang is naturally dead. He didn't have the opportunity to become a ghost like me. After so many years, he has probably been reincarnated several times. Senior, does a mortal scholar have such great charm? Shui asked curiously. He actually made you give up your cultivation? Young lady, you still don't understand. Huang Yi said, there is no reason for love. No matter if it is an immortal or a mortal, there is no difference in status. I understand. Shui hurriedly said, actually, Junior and Xiaohua are about the same. This Junior just doesn't understand. What does a weak scholar like him have to make Senior fall in love with him? Huang Yi shook his head and said, you are wrong. The people of the world have been confused by the Immortal Alliance and the Huang family. Yu Lang is not a scholar. He is a Confucian cultivator, a ranger. Confucian cultivator? Ranger? Xiaohua was stunned. He looked at Shui, also baffled. Sai, you all don't know. Early in the ancient times, Xiaoyu continent didn't only have Taoism. There were also Yao cultivators, beast cultivators, Buddhist cultivators, Confucian cultivators, and other different cultivation paths. Huang Yi smiled bitterly. But later, for some reason, Taoism became the dominant sect and blocked all other cultivation paths. Yu Lang only became a ranger because he obtained the inheritance of Confucian cultivators. I understand. Huang Yi suddenly realized and said, Jinghua City's Zhu family was an extremely famous Confucian cultivator family after the ancient times. Their curse was probably left behind by Taoism's seniors. Really? Xiaohua asked in disbelief. Huang Yi said embarrassedly, I can't be sure. Yu Lang told me all this that day. And Yu Lang, because he had the inheritance of Confucian cultivators and cultivated the core of Dan, he was discovered by the Huang family seniors and was discovered by the Immortal Alliance. At this point, Huang Yi was disappointed. She raised her head and saw another thick bolt of heavenly lightning striking down from the sky. The power of the heavenly lightning was stronger than the previous one. Huang Yi was already injured by the heavenly lightning just now, so this time it was even more difficult. She managed to eliminate the heavenly lightning with great difficulty, but her body faded a bit. Yu Lang, it was all this servant's fault. It's a pity that I became a ghost and became a ghost cultivator. I can't see Yu Lang anymore. Huang Yi said sorrowfully, if I wasn't injured and wasn't saved by Yu Lang in the ancient temple, none of this would have happened. Xue Xue accompanied Huang Yi in her grief, but Xiaohua looked pensive. After Huang Yi dodged a bolt of heavenly lightning, he clapped his hands and took out Confucian clothes, core of Dan, and turtle shell. He asked, Senior, is this the core of Dan you mentioned? Ah? Once the core of Dan was taken out, a bright red light shone brightly. Huang Yi hurriedly blocked it with her hands and cried out, This is the core of Dan. The core of Dan with overwhelming righteousness. Quickly put it away. I can't bear it. But just as Xiaohua was about to put the core of Dan away, Huang Yi shouted again, don't worry, this core of Dan. Why does it have Yu Lang's breath? Yes, this is Yu Lang's core of Dan. As Huang Yi spoke, she floated up and resisted the red light from the core of Dan that was slowly corroding her body. She touched the core of Dan with her hand and said, That's not right. Yu Lang died in the cold river that day. How could he? Seeing that Huang Yi's body was corroding, Xiaohua didn't dare to be careless. He waved his hand and put the core of Dan into his space. Huang Yi was very disappointed and sad. He stared at the void and no one knew what he was thinking. He didn't care about his body at all. Maybe, Senior, you also had other opportunities and practiced Confucian cultivation after reincarnation. Xiaohua comforted her carefully. Haha, little friend Xiao, if you don't enter the ghost path, you won't know about reincarnation. Huang Yi smiled bitterly and said, Although I don't know the truth, I know that Yu Lang won't be able to. At this point, Huang Yi didn't seem to want to say anything more. He looked at the Confucian robe and tortoise shell in Xiaohua's hands and said, These are indeed items of Confucian cultivation. The Confucian robe is the same as the Tao sect's magic treasure and can protect the body. The tortoise shell records the Confucian cultivation method. The characters are different from my Tao sects. However, little friend Xiao, I won't tell you. Yu Lang is your predecessor. In the Dawn Rain continent where the Tao sect was at its peak, Confucian cultivation could only be killed. Yes, Junior. Naturally knows. Xiaohua nodded and put the Confucian robe and tortoise shell into his space. Rumble in the sky above the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. There was another burst of thunder. Huang Yi's waist was already empty. Obviously, he might not be able to withstand another lightning tribulation. Huang Yi looked up and said, I naturally cultivate the ghost path. 1,000-year small lightning tribulation, 10,000-year large lightning tribulation. I'm always worried about the future. Day and night, I have to think of ways to avoid the lightning tribulation. Today, I'm afraid this will be my last lightning tribulation. In the future, I won't exist in this world anymore. No one will know the real story of Little Cabbage. Since that's the case, I'll tell little friend Xiao the details. Senior, can't you enter reincarnation? Xue Xue said anxiously. She really sympathized with Huang Yi. Silly girl. Huang Yi looked at Xue Xue lovingly and said, The heavens are fair. Since I entered the ghost path and stayed in this world, I can't reincarnate and become a human again. So it's like that. Xue Xue was extremely disappointed, but Xiaohua's heart was moved. Just as he was about to speak, Huang Yi said again, I remember that it was a bright and beautiful spring day. I met the enemies of the Huang family in the distance of the cold river. I was seriously injured and barely managed to escape to the cold river. They blocked me in the sky above the ancient temple. Just as I was about to lose my life, Wandering Man wore a Confucian robe and held a long sword in his hand. He was like an immortal descending to this world. Although he knew his cultivation was insufficient, he still risked his life to save me, a person he had never met before. Sigh, little friend Xiao, your actions today are very similar to Xiao Lang's from that day. This is also the reason why I haven't made a move on you yet. Without waiting for Xiaohua to speak, Huang Yi said again, Under Wandering Man's protection, the two of us escaped from the cold river for several thousand li and finally threw off the strong enemy. However, the two of us were also seriously injured. Sigh, what a miserable couple. It wasn't easy to find a secluded valley with beautiful spring flowers to recuperate. That was the beginning of the most beautiful memories in my life. Hee hee, Little Cabbage was the name I made up to deal with Wandering Man at that time. I remember clearly that for a total of 104 days, I didn't know why I didn't send a summoning talisman. However, after I returned to the Huang family, I didn't stop thinking about the days in the secluded valley. I didn't stop thinking about Wandering Man. It was only at that time that I realized that I had already fallen in love with Wandering Man. I fell in love with that Wandering Man who saw no evil, heard no evil, spoke no evil, moved no evil, was cautious and even somewhat inflexible. It was also because of him that I didn't want to send a summoning talisman for a long time. After that, I thought for a long time. I even paced back and forth in front of the ancient temple for a long time before I went to look for Wandering Man again. Huang Yi's tone revealed a trace of shyness and happiness. Fortunately, Wandering Man seemed to be the same as me. He was also absent-minded in the ancient temple and recited Guan Guan Ju Do on the river's continent. A gentle and graceful lady, a gentleman's good mate. When he saw my arrival, he was actually surprised and happy. It was as if our hearts were connected. We began. We thought it was a love destined by the heavens. However, a few years later, when I was discussing the matter of dual cultivation with Wandering Man, I found out that Wandering Man was actually a Confucian cultivator that I had never heard of before. Furthermore, Confucian cultivators were the great enemies of the Taoist sect. I would never be able to openly dual cultivate with him. However, I didn't care at all. As long as I could stay by Wandering Man's side, everything else was not a problem. Huang Yi continued, "It's a pity that this servant's cultivation did not improve. In the end, the family head, who was also this servant's father, found out. I was too naive. I thought that I could narrow the gap between the Taoist sect and the Confucian cultivators with the love between father and daughter. I thought that I would be able to complete my beautiful dream of growing old together with you. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. -8. Chapter 1955. However, I never expected that for the sake of the Huang family's future, my father would report this matter to the Immortal Alliance. In order to destroy the inheritance of the Confucian cultivators, the Immortal Alliance actually set a trap in the cold river. They used my name to lure Yulang here, and tried to kill him with the strength of several people. However, I knew that the situation was not good. When I arrived, Yulang was already dying. I knew that it was because of me, so I severed all ties with the Huang family and even the Dao sect at the bank of the cold river. I swore that I would live and die with Yulang. But this servant's cultivation is really too shallow. Seeing Yulang die in this servant's arms, this servant was helpless. The people from the Immortal Alliance were even more ruthless. They didn't care about the consequences and killed me. Huang Yi said hatefully, however, that day was the same as today. It was the 15th day of the 7th month, the day of the 100 Ghosts journey. A malicious ghost was in the same situation as me today, avoiding the tribulation on the cold river. Unfortunately, he couldn't avoid the tribulation. When he couldn't avoid the tribulation, he saw my soul. I inherited the true blood of the Huang family's vermilion bird. Although it hadn't been awakened, my soul was different from ordinary souls. That malicious ghost wanted to devour my soul to refine the seven-eyed amorous flame to resist the tribulation. Unfortunately, he was devoured by my soul. However, it was because I devoured that malicious ghost that I was forced to cultivate the Ghost Tao. However, there were also experts from the Immortal Alliance who understood the Ghost Tao that day. They actually used their divine ability to destroy my soul. In desperation, I divided my soul into thousands of pieces and placed them in the bodies of the fishes in the cold river. Huang Yi recalled, I wanted to use this to escape. However, after the experts from the Immortal Alliance killed all the fishes in the cold river, they were afraid that my soul would escape, so they made up a touching story. Alas, it wasn't really a story. They only told the story of the cabbage. They said that couples who ate the cabbage would grow old together. The fishermen on the cold river also added fuel to the fire. They worked even harder to catch the cabbage, which led to the scarcity of the cabbage. Over the past tens of thousands of years, who knows how many cultivators and mortals have consumed my soul? Seeing Shue's confusion, Huang Yi added, "That day, after my soul escaped, I endured the pain of being steamed and devoured by others. I cultivated the Ghost Dao diligently, and when I achieved great success in the Ghost Dao, I immediately wanted to take back all of my soul. However, at that time, I realized that my soul had already merged with the fish and could not be taken back. I could only take back all of the imprints on my soul and let it perish on its own. Humph! As soon as this servant mastered my divine ability, I wanted to avenge Yu Lang. Unfortunately, this servant's cultivation base couldn't catch up to the experts of the Immortal Alliance, so I could only vent my anger on the Huang clan. This servant cast the curse technique of the Ghost Cultivator on the Huang clan's ancestor. Didn't this servant's greedy father want to plot against the Huang clan's future? This servant will not let him have his way. Hee. This led to the decline of the Huang clan of Tianmin Mountain. When Xiaohua heard this, he didn't know how to comfort Huang Yi. The pain that Huang Yi suffered was far beyond his imagination, so he definitely couldn't persuade him. However, the Huang clan's suffering for tens of thousands of years still can't resolve this servant's resentment. Today, this servant has made two preparations. If this servant can't survive the heavenly tribulation in Huang Mingxiang's body, then this servant is prepared to take a risk and see if I can seize Huang Mingxiang's body. Although it's almost impossible, Huang Mengxiang and I both have the Suzaku's sacred blood, so there's a glimmer of hope. If this servant can't survive the heavenly tribulation, then the Huang clan of Tianmin Mountain, from today onwards, it won't exist in the Xiaoyu continent. Alas, who knew that fate makes fools of people? This servant actually met fellow Xiao. Then, Huang Mingxiang's dream experience can be considered as a little compensation to the Huang clan. As he spoke, Huang Yi glanced at Xiaohua. Although he didn't say anything, Xiaohua naturally knew the meaning of this gaze. His face slightly reddened, and he felt unnatural for a while. Alas, actually, when this servant reached out to attack Huang Tianla and the others just now, I already couldn't bear it in my heart. Huang Yi sighed and said, "After all, they are of the same lineage, and they are all this servant's juniors. When I was casting the charm earlier, I felt that it was satisfying, and I was happy to take revenge. However, to really kill them, I still can't. To tell you the truth, fellow Xiao, when this servant saw that Huang Mengxiang's talent was outstanding and that he wasn't affected by this servant's charm, I also felt that this was the will of the heavens and that it was time for this servant to stop. Unfortunately, this servant's charm technique is easy to cast, but difficult to remove. This servant is powerless. Alas, forget it, forget it." After Huang Yi finished speaking, he looked up at the sky and shouted, "Wandering man, a wandering man, this servant is going to leave. Saying that we will meet again in the next life is just a luxury." Kachacha, there was another burst of thunder, and the heavenly thunder descended. At this moment, Huang Yi no longer had any resistance. He only stared at the heavenly thunder with his 7 eyes and gave up after a little resistance. Seeing the heavenly thunder rolling, Huang Yi's body was suffused with bits of lightning, and his entire body was gradually melting. Xiaohua understood that Huang Yi had resisted the heavenly thunder tribulation for tens of thousands of years and was already exhausted. Moreover, at this moment, she had revealed everything. The hatred in her heart had already been eliminated, and she no longer had the desire to live in this world. This heavenly thunder tribulation might be her release. Let this servant turn into dust, dissipate in this Tianmin mountain, and become an eternal legend above the cold river. Huang Yi said sadly, "I also hope that all the lovers who have eaten this servant's body will be married." Shui couldn't help but cry, and her expression was sorrowful. Senior Xiaohua bowed and said, "Junior has something that I don't understand." There's no harm in speaking. At this moment, the heavenly thunder tribulation had already passed, but the heavenly thunder tribulation was forming again. Clearly, it was not giving Huang Yi any time to breathe. But even if the heavenly thunder tribulation just now had already greatly damaged Huang Yi's vitality, most of his body had already disappeared, leaving only a badly damaged upper body and a very complete head. Junior wants to know, Senior has cultivated the ghost path for tens of thousands of years. Is it the same as a normal soul or soul essence? Is it possible to reincarnate after being reincarnated? Xiao Hua asked carefully. Huang Yi was shocked and said thoughtfully, "Little friend Xiao, ghosts are originally formed by powerful souls, which is the so-called condensation of 3 souls and 6 spirits. It is not fundamentally different from the so-called soul essence. According to this servant's knowledge, there are devil path methods that can suck away this servant's soul, or increase cultivation, or refine devil tools. Little friend Xiao is not a person of the devil path, so you will not have devil path methods. But little friend Xiao's dharma body seems to be somewhat strange and somewhat related to soul essence. Little friend Xiao is not thinking of sucking away this servant's soul, right?" "No, no," Xiao Hua said anxiously, Junior. Seeing that Huang Yi had misunderstood, Xiao Hua hurriedly patted his forehead and circulated the exquisite leaf scripture. When the Buddha Saraira in Xiao Hua's Niwen Palace shone brightly with golden light, he immediately chanted the incantation, Lin. The hidden swastika symbol on his forehead gradually appeared, and then it quickly spun, and then projected a tiny swastika symbol of golden light in front of Xiao Hua's head. That golden light gradually expanded with the circulation of Xiao Hua's Buddhist mantra, and a Buddha Saraira with one hand pointing to the sky and the other pointing to the ground gradually formed. 8. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.